Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely...
Okay, this story is insane. This happened to my family when I was in high school. And it sounds like it's not even real, but I promise you it is. It involves demons, exorcism, deliverance, whatever you want to call it. So in high school, we had a housekeeper. For her privacy, we'll call her Joanna. So one day, Joanna comes up to my mom, and she's really distraught. And she's like, I don't know what to do. Please, can you help me? And my mom's like, what's going on? And she knew that we were Christian and spiritual. And I guess she thought that maybe my mom would know something that'd be able to help her. So she was like, we've been having a lot of paranormal, ghost, demonic activity in our house. And my mom was like, what do you mean? What's going on? So she tells my mom that everything started going crazy when one of her neighbors or somebody that she knew gifted her youngest daughter a bicycle, like a tiny little tricycle that she could ride inside the apartment. And she had two daughters. So the youngest one got this tricycle and received this gift. They were really happy. And then weird things started happening. Like, she said that in the middle of the night, they would hear like the bell of the tricycle ringing, and they would like hear it like going around the house by itself when the kids were not on it. The kids were asleep in their bed. And then she would start to get up like late at night and go look and see what the noises were. And the daughters would too. And they literally said that they would see the tricycle like going around the apartment at night, riding around with nobody riding it. Things started to get weirder. The youngest daughter, who was gifted the tricycle thing, she started seeing like a little boy, like a tiny little toddler boy, like a demon, running around their house at night and playing with the tricycle and playing with her toys. And it started to talk to her and befriend her. And it would tell her to go and hide like knives from the kitchen underneath her bed. It would tell her to harm herself, to harm her sister, and different things like that. So at this point, this is when Joanna comes to my mom, and she does not know what else to do. She's like, this is a spiritual problem. I don't know if I have ghosts in my house, if I have demons in my house. I don't know what is going on. And luckily, she went to my mom, because all the women in my family, me, my mom, my grandma, great grandma, we're ministers, and we know how to clean houses, cast out demons, all of that stuff. And instead of going to like a psychic or a witch or something like that to go and help her. So my mom and my grandma meet with her, and they just start talking to her and explaining to her that these are demons in your house. They're not ghosts, because when we die, we go to heaven or hell, and our souls are not trapped here on earth in some in-between realm and unfinished business. That's all baloney. So they're like, you have demons in your house, and the good thing is that these can leave when you call on the name of Jesus. So we're going to come to your house. We're going to cleanse your house, pray over your house, cast the demons out. People call it different things, but they were like, that's what we're going to do. And she was like, great, come over. So my mom, my grandma, and their friend, I'm like, this is before I'm in ministry. I'm in high school. Now I'm a minister and I do this stuff all the time, but this was like 10 years ago. So my mom, my grandma, and their friend, they go to their house, they explain the gospel, believe in Jesus, get saved, and be filled with the Holy Spirit. And then like, okay, now that you have the power of God inside of you, the power of God in your home, let's kick these demons out, because sage and crystals and waving around like plants and those things do not get rid of demons. Those things invite demons. And so we were like, the only one who has the power to cast out these spirits and send them back to where they came from so they stop tormenting you is Jesus Christ. So they're like, okay, like, let's go. So they start praying. They anoint the home with oil, commanding every demon, so basically what happened, if you guys are like, how did this even happen? A tricycle. So whoever gave that tricycle, that item was cursed, that object was cursed, or that person was like a witch or a warlock, and they attached a curse and demonic spirits onto that gift and gave it to them. So whatever gifts that you are receiving, be very careful. Don't like take gifts from strangers, or especially don't take any gifts or presents or whatever from people who are involved in witchcraft, the occult, tarot cards, astrology. I used to do some of those things, and it's all really, really evil and demonic. And my story's on my page if you want to go look at that. So yeah, anyways, to end the story, it's so crazy. So after they pray and they command all the demons to get out of their house, threw away the tricycle and everything like that, prayed over the daughter, commanded all demons to leave, then the little girl is like staring out the back patio, and she was just like kept looking out the window, and my mom was like, what do you see? And she was like, the little boy and like the spirit. She was like, they're outside the door, like trying to come in. And my mom was like, are they able to come in? Are they coming in? And she was like, no, like they can't cross the door, like they're not allowed back in anymore. I don't know why. And they were like, because Jesus lives in your house now, the Holy Spirit is protecting you, and there is a barrier that they cannot cross because you're covered in the blood of Jesus, and he's your Lord and Savior now. And that Part of the story always gives me chills. It's so beautiful. God protects us. So there are definitely things that you can do to protect your house and clean out your house. I get so sad when I see people saying, oh, we had to move out, we had to sell the house, we were tormented for years and years. It's like, call on the name of Jesus, anoint your house with oil, get saved, and command those things out of your house. They're the ones who are trespassing, not you. Anyways, if you thought this was interesting, if you want to hear more spiritual tips, spiritual stories, go ahead and hit that follow button, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Be blessed. And I hope you know today that Jesus loves you. He died on the cross for you to have a new life. Be blessed.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely...
So I'm never on TikTok. I just saw this trend blowing up and I felt like I had to hop on it. So this was about a year ago. It was early May. And my friends and I decided to go eat ramen at this new ramen place that opened up in our city. And it was pretty good. You know, we had a good time at the ramen place. That's really not what this story is about. But we were sitting in my car. It was about 9 o'clock. We were sitting in the parking lot just talking. The store had closed. So we were just sitting there and talking and being on our phones and, you know, having a good time. I'm in the driver's seat, obviously, because it's my car. And my friend Shade is in the passenger seat. And we were sitting and talking, and I was in the middle of a sentence. And they keep saying, dude. And I finally stop and I look at them, and they're looking out, like, of the window behind me, of the driver's side window. And the look on their face, I can only describe as a deer being caught in headlights. It was an animal, like, staring down the barrel of headlights, knowing they were about to be hit by a car. Like, it was horrifying to see their face. And I look at them, and it takes me a second to, like, register that they're looking at something behind me. I think they kind of pointed, too. They were like, look. And I turn around, and the car beside us, there is this thing. I can only describe it as a dog humanoid thing. It was sitting in the passenger side of the car, like, sitting next to us. It was the closest seat next to us. And it was sitting up like a person in the seat. But it had, like, ears and a muzzle. But it had, like, human eyes. And it was covered in, like, fur. It was very long fur. And it was very floppy ears. And I, like, stared at it. And the feeling I got, I cannot describe. It was dread. It was... Before I could even figure out what I was looking at, I instantly knew in my gut that I shouldn't be there, something was wrong, and I should go. I didn't even scream. I was frozen solid, terrified, staring at this thing. And I didn't say a word to Shade. I threw my car in reverse and hauled ass out of there. It was terrifying. Two friends of mine live in an apartment complex about a block away, it's a walkable distance away, right? And that's exactly where I drove to, because I just didn't know where to go. So I drove and I parked in the parking lot of their apartment complex, and I called one of the people who lived there, my friend, and I was like, you will never guess what the fuck is happening to me. I'm terrified, like, I don't know what to do. You know, I'm like at your apartment complex right now, like, I don't know what to do. And my friend, you know, was like, it's not the best time for you to come in, but, like, I hope you're safe. Like, they can verify, like, you can ask them and they'd be like, they believe us, because we were terrified. We were, like, there's not a word for it. There's really no. So my friends and I were like, okay, so to get back to anybody's house, we have to pass that parking lot again. So we're like, okay, let's just brave it and drive past it. And you can see it from the road. It's a restaurant, like, attached to, like, a strip mall thing. So it's a pretty big parking lot that you can see from the road. And, you know, we drove past it, and keep in mind that it was dark. It was 9 p.m., like, past 9 p.m. at this point. The restaurant was closed. And there was really not many cars in the parking lot. And there was the one car, we were parked in front of the restaurant, like, directly in front, and there was only one car parked directly in front of the restaurant. It was the same car that we saw the thing in, and the doors were open and the hazard lights were on. Nothing much has happened since then. There was, like, for about a week I could hear a baby crying, like, down the street I live on. But I did some cleansing and everything's good now. But I, like, still to this day, when I try to, like, describe the feeling of, like, heebie-jeebies or, like, oh, I know something is wrong, I use this experience as, like, a reference. I do. Like, if I get a bad feeling about something, I use this experience as a reference of how bad is it. Because this was horrible. It was a terrifying, I mean, I have no other words for it. It was unreal. Like, it was something, like, I looked at it, and my brain almost tried to fill in the gaps as, like, this is CGI. Until I realized that we're not in a movie. This is real life. I'm looking at something in front of me. Still the scariest thing I've experienced to this day.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable, but is entirely...
So my mom got this house in this town, and the house was huge. So I'm gonna give y'all the display of the house. It was the living room. When you open the front door, it's the living room, my mom's room, a den, and my sister's room. So there's a glass door. Behind the glass door is a kitchen. It's a room on the left-hand side, a bath, a restroom, and then you have another door on the right-hand side of the kitchen. This is the second part of the house. You have the washing machine, the dryer, the back door, and it's a screen door. It's like a little sitting area and a screen door. Then you have a bathroom, and then you have my room, which consists of a den and my room. So my room is like one big-ass room. So y'all, I had my music playing. All the lights was off in the whole house because, like, at this time, I was like the man of the house type of situation, bitch queen of the house, whatever. So, so y'all, I had turned all the lights off. My sisters and my mom was straight up front, so I shut both of the doors, the front door to the kitchen, and then the second door going back to my part of the house. In my room, vibing, lights turned off, music playing, in the bed, chilling. So I hear my mama call my name, and it was like 4 or 5 times. So I turn my music off. I'm like, yes, yes, ma'am. What you need, mom? Never heard nothing. So shit, I'm like, let me turn my damn music back on. Obviously, it wasn't that important. That's how I was feeling at the time. Y'all, I turn my music back on, and they can't hear in the front of the house what I have going on. I could have a whole fucking house full of friends in the house. Nobody would know it. So I turn my music back on, y'all, and I hear my mama scream my name. So I'm like, at this point, let me get the fuck up and go see what's really going on, because something going on. Y'all, I opened my room door, and the screen door where the back door is was like, boom. As soon as I opened my door. That shit set me in a frenzy. So I turned the light on, looked outside the back door, y'all. The screen door was locked from the inside in. Like, somebody in the house had to lock it, and the back door was locked. So that was the first red flag that threw me off. Mind you, my room and stuff is still dark, and the music is still playing, but it's low. The only light on is the light in this hallway. So I opened the door to go through the kitchen, the first door, and then I opened the second door to get to the front of the house. Y'all, I went in my mama's room, I'm like, girl, this is how we talk to each other. I'm like, girl, you keep calling my name. What's going on? Like, you got me back there scared. What's going on? Because I keep hearing you say my name. Yeah, my mama turned around. She was on her phone. She turned around, looked at me. She said, I have not called your fucking name. These are her exact words. I have not called your fucking name. If I needed you, I would have called your phone, or I would have walked back there. I know you said you was playing your music. So we were staring at each other, just looking at each other like something ain't right. So I was like, Mom, I'm telling you, I heard somebody saying my name and it was your voice. Like, please don't tell me that wasn't you. And I kept saying, ma'am, She was like, next time you hear something like that, just come up here and call me on the phone and see if it was me. She was like, don't answer to, because we have this thing, and y'all, I got chill bumps. I'm sorry, I keep pausing. We have this thing where ghosts are real. Like, let's just say that spirits are real. Like, we believe that spirits were real. So I went back to the back of the house, y'all. The doors that I had open to get back to my room, the 2 doors in the kitchen were fucking closed. The light that I turned on in the hallway was off, and my room door was closed when I left it open. Why the fuck, when I got back to the back of the house, y'all, my room door was closed, that light was off, the 2 kitchen doors was closed, and the goddamn lights in my room were on, and the speaker was loud as fuck. The gaming system on, the computer on, both of the TVs in the den, like the commons den area, and my room, like everything was on loud as fuck. Y'all, I ran back to the front of the fucking house so fucking fast. Like, excuse my language, but I got chill bumps, and it's bothering me. What the fuck? And when I walked back, I didn't walk. I was running back to the front of the house. I felt something like behind me. You know, like somebody walking behind you, can feel it. I felt like something on me, behind me. I could not turn around. I was scared it was gonna get me. Like, is that scary? Is that not scary? Like, what the fuck?
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely.
So, a little bit of a backstory. I don't like anything scary. I have been forced to watch The Conjuring, Insidious. I cry, gives me nightmares, hate it. So, I moved in with who is now my ex-husband at the time. He was from Veracruz. I moved in with him and his entire family. When I mean his entire family, I mean his sister, her husband, their 4 kids, his 2 brothers, and their cousin. Until this home they were renting, it was like a 1900s home in McHenry, Illinois, on Riverside Drive. And when I say this home was so old, it literally had like one of those metal, like cage things you want to say, like in the living room, that like, it was like a sewer thing that like, I don't know what it was for, a tunnel, whatever it is. I never tried to look, but it always had weird noises come out of it, first of all. The first experience that I ever experienced in that home with them was when my sister-in-law had just given birth and brought her baby home. It was just me, her, and the baby in the home. Everybody had just recently left, and we heard the baby screaming. When we went to go in there, we couldn't find the baby. It was not in the crib. It was underneath the crib. I tried not to think too much of this just because I thought maybe one of the guys was playing a prank and put the baby under there. One of the kids did something. They were jealous of the baby. There could have been a reasoning behind it. She was totally freaked out, though. Every reason to be, right? There was also, they had birds. And when I mean my brother-in-law had birds, he had like 30 parakeets in one room. And these things would go off every night at like 2 and 3 in the morning and start squealing. And they would flap their wings so hard it would wake me up where we slept in the attic. And it was extremely creepy. I remember one night my ex-husband coming home from work, and he went to go take a shower downstairs, and he did not come back up. I had to go look for him, and he was passed out on the floor. And he specifically was terrified and told everybody that some woman he saw in the mirror, and she literally like just scratched his chest like this. He did not have any scratch marks on his chest, but he did on his back. Later, like a week later, he had become so sick, like lethargic, was not eating, was not sleeping. We had to take him to the hospital because he could barely walk. And like they had no answers. They assumed it was maybe like an infection in his bloodstream or heart. They gave him medication. Nothing ever really fixed the problem. And he was determined, like he never slept. He was paranoid about this. And like it started making me nervous because about a year later, the same thing happened to his brother. Like less than a year later, actually, because I only lived there for like a year and 2 months. And his brother actually was diagnosed with insomnia. He literally could not open his eyes. We had to take him somewhere for them to like take care of him until he was well enough to come home. And he never was the same after that. A little bit of a backstory. I had no idea about Hispanic culture. Like I said, obviously I love it now. I had no idea in the things that they believed in, but when I was trying to get pregnant and I kept having miscarriages, his family had told me that like their grandma could help me get pregnant and there was things that she could do. She'd help many people in their town. And so I drank what they gave me and I let them put the leaves on me that they did, like just because he felt so passionately about this. Later we actually moved out because things kept happening, doors slamming, and it was just really weird, and I was not comfortable with his family and their beliefs and the things that they kept pushing on me. And it was just time to be on our own. Our baby was about to become, and we moved into a home right beside theirs, a street down. And my ex and I split because he actually like literally tried to murder me. There's paperwork on it. You can go back in my other TikToks. I'm not going to get into it. But his family's defense was that he was possessed. In court, he lives in Veracruz now. He has warrants here. He'll go to prison a very long time. They're convinced to this day. And when they said that in court that he was possessed and it wasn't his fault was the day that I cut contact off of them, and they've never heard from me and my daughter again. And we moved to a different town because I was running. So I'm now in my first apartment by myself. I'm seeing somebody else, and like these things keep happening. And the new person that I'm with does not like believe in brujeria or any of those things. And like, he would be like, I don't even know why you would be with somebody like that, right? He would always tell me that he felt something in the middle of the night in our hallway. And we ended up actually putting like this
poster of La Virgen right there because of how scared he was getting. And later on, we were together for about 5 years, and this happened on and off. Our kids said the same thing. And we broke up, like, over different reasons, obviously. Now I'm alone, and like I've never been like alone in this house before, because I was in this apartment with him. And on the first couple nights, like, I'm panicking in my sleep because I would wake up and I would feel something so dark, like, over me, like black, but there was nothing to it. It was just more like a figure, and that was it. Like, right when I woke up, I started seeing somebody, and he did believe in brujeria and all of that, but was like against it almost. He had all the red bracelets. He saw like somebody all the time, like, to give limpias and all of that. And like, he was like, Nicole, like, there's something here and you need to get help. Because like, I would start waking up in the middle of the night with like bruises all over my legs. I'm still not like, I'm like, you know what? I heavy lift in the gym. I could have knocked something. Who knows? I'm so pale, whatever. Until one night when literally we were dead asleep, and I felt like I was almost still sleeping, but I wasn't. And I started hearing screeching on a fan, because I sleep with a fan every night. And I'm hearing pounding on my door, like rattling, pounding on my front door. Now, I'm terrified, and he's not waking up, and I'm not understanding how he's not hearing this rattling. I go to the door, and when I look out the peephole, there's nothing there. It's completely black. I open the door. Now, I tell my best friend, Analia, this, and she was like, tell me you did not open that fucking door. And I was like, I did open the door. And she was like, you opened a presence into your home that you don't need there, and something is going on. When I tell you that this kept happening, and the only reason that I had opened the door was that I had an ex that literally stalked my life, and I had police documentation, and I was so terrified that like something was going on, and that's why I opened my door, to be honest. I finally agreed, after having bruises everywhere on me, to go see somebody. And I never believed in these things until I sat down with this guy, and he literally looked at me without asking me any questions or knowing anything about me. That my friend took me to someone I trusted very much. And they like told me things about myself that like I never told anything. Like, one, that my mother is adopted, where my ex was from. And he asked me specifically, he said, did you drink something that your ex's family gave you, his sister specifically? And I was like, yes. And he goes, and this sister didn't like you, right? And I was like, well, no, we never really got along for cultural reasons. And he was like, she made it so that you could never be happy and be with anyone ever again. And the spirit that was in that house was a woman, and she's trying to protect you, and she never wanted you to drink that drink or to be with this person. And when I tell you, I was so freaked the fuck out that I literally let him do whatever he wanted to do. And like, he told me to take my shirt. He tore shirt cuts in the shirt. He like patted me with these plants. I'm not educated. I don't know these things. Told me to take the shirt, throw it somewhere, and not look back. And I did that. And let me tell you, ever since then, everything has been peaceful. And it was the scariest thing that I've ever been through in my life. And I don't ever recommend anything like that to anyone.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable, but
I've been asked by so many people to make this video talking about the house I lived in Alabama from 2007 to 2013 because it was so haunted. The entire town knew about it, and it traumatized my family. So this is not a silly hee hee ha ha ghost. This is a evil spirit that lived with our family in this house and traumatized my family to the point where it made my mom go crazy, made us super depressed, on the brink of, you know, type of ghost, okay? Bear with me. A month after moving into that house, the previous owners who built the house, they both died. They were old, but they both died. We move in, and immediately things start going missing. Things start getting misplaced. You know, it's messing with us. About a month after moving in, we all woke up at around 2, 3 o'clock in the morning to a very loud crashing noise. The front of the house was all glass, so we thought the window shattered or something. Turns out the ghost decided to take a shelf with anchors in the wall, drag it down the wall, and rip it out of the wall. We would constantly hear boots stomping down the stairs in the middle of the night. My room was at the end of a long hallway every single night at 11 o'clock. Old man, boots stomping, coming down the hallway. I would hide under my covers. I was like 12, 13 years old, just like hiding under my covers. I'm not afraid to admit it because I was terrified. I would go sleep in my parents' room. I would be so scared of this ghost. At one point, the fire alarm outside of my room, every night, 3 o'clock in the morning, it would go off. We finally took out the batteries. It was still going off. 3 o'clock in the morning on the dot. We ended up having to straight snip the wires to make it stop. We saw plenty of shadow figures. There was a girl that looked like me that would like run through the house that my dad would think was me. Turns out I would be like asleep on the couch. People would come over and be like, oh, I don't believe in ghosts. And the ghost took that to heart and would show itself by slamming doors, pushing chairs, moving the cereal bowls, like really making its presence known, if you know what I mean. It would scratch us and attack us. We would wake up with scratches on our body, turn off the TV, open and shut cabinet doors. You never felt like you were alone in that house. You always felt like somebody was watching you. And as a kid growing up like that, it is absolutely frightening. My mom got to the point where she couldn't be in the house anymore because she was feeling so like Amityville horror. Think of that kind of oppression. It's kind of like that. It was making her go insane. So she would go visit my family in Arizona for months at a time and then come back. When we moved out of that house, we were not allowed to talk about moving because we were so scared that it was going to attach to us and come with us. Somewhere there's photos of like the faces in the windows. I'll have to find it. It's somewhere. When we did sell the house, we sold it to this guy that my dad knows. Not super well. He didn't really know about the house because he lived further away. He moves in and about 2 months later, he calls my dad. Like, hey, is this house haunted? I need you to be honest with me. And my dad's like, he's like, no, I still want the house. His wife ended up having to leave the house and no longer lives there with him because of the spirit in the house. And about like a month after leaving the house and moving here to Texas, we go back and visit, me and my dad, and we go into the house. We're like, you know, this is a nice house. It's nice to be home. And we're sitting there enjoying it in the silence in the kitchen. Above the kitchen was my room. You hear, boom! Yep. Good reminder. Never mind. Let's go sleep at grandma's. My parents would shower together, and razors would be thrown across the shower at them. Plates would get thrown out of the cabinets and break. One time my mom put her hand in the garbage disposal, and guess what turned on? You would wake up to somebody breathing on you and pressing down on you in your bed. One time, the chandelier starts swinging, like swinging, and it was at a place where, like, you had to be, like, 7 feet tall in order to reach it from the stairs, and our dog, Chopper, a German Shepherd, he was growling at it, right? So we were like, okay, if there's somebody here, call the dog. His ears perked up, and he started walking towards it, and then sat and was growling again. I know people want like a hee ha ha ghost story, but when you live in a house like that, it is actually like traumatizing.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
Okay, I have to share one of the craziest experiences that I've ever had in my life. I have so many ghost stories, but this one is one of the craziest. So this happened when I was in middle school. I was probably about 13 or 14, and it happened with my 2 best friends at the time. Let's call them C and K. So this night in particular, we were all staying at C's house, and it was the middle of December, and her family, her mom and dad and her little brother, were off at a wedding an hour away from where we were. So, just like typical teenage girls, we loved watching horror movies together, so we decided this night we would watch The Ring for the first time together. When we watched movies at C's house, we would always watch them downstairs in the basement. That was just the hangout spot whenever we were over there. In this basement, when you would walk directly down the stairs, you would enter into the living room, where we would watch movies. On the back wall, there was one couch. On the opposite wall of the staircase, there was another couch. In front was the TV. and directly to the left of the staircase was a storage room door. When we started watching the movie, I was sitting in an office chair directly in front of the storage room door. C was sitting on the couch directly on the back wall, and K was sitting on the couch across from the staircase. We get probably a quarter to a halfway through the movie when the storage room door behind me that was closed slowly creaks open, slams shut, and slowly creaks open again. All three of us screamed, and we all ran over to the couch where Kay was sitting. For some reason, it didn't cross any of our minds to even go and check into the storage room to see if anything was in there. So we all just curled up on that couch together and put a blanket over us and called it good. We continued watching the movie, and at one point, I distinctly remember all three of us sitting in a row, texting on our flip phones to who knows who. At that moment, while all three of us were mid-text, all of the power in the entire house, including all three of our cell phones, goes out and turns off. As we are sitting there bewildered and confused to what is going on, all of the power and our phones turn back on, and C's mom runs down the stairs asking if we're okay. We thought nothing of this and just told her, yeah, we're okay, we don't know what happened, and she went back upstairs. Don't ask me why, but for some reason we decided to finish the movie, and at this point it's probably 11 p.m., so it's time to take Kay home. At this age, we just walked everywhere we would go, so we were just going to walk Kay home this night, since she only lived about 10 blocks away from C's, and then I was going to spend the night with C. We all get our coats on and get our shoes on and walk upstairs to go let C's parents know that we're going to be walking Kay home. When we get upstairs, there is nobody in the house. It is dead silent. All three of us are so confused because her mom just ran down the stairs a few minutes ago asking us if we were okay. When we get outside, we see that it is a snowstorm outside and there's a fresh layer of snow on the ground. C's parents' truck was not home and there was no footprints in the snow whatsoever. They did not come home from the wedding yet. As weird as this was to us, we didn't think twice about it and continued walking Kay home. On our way to Kay's house, we were walking down the main street and there was a runner coming towards us. So all three of us split the way, let the runner go by, turned around. There was nobody there. After we got Kay safely to our house, C and I booked it home. We booked it as fast as we could, ran inside, locked those doors, and tried our best to get a good night's sleep. Since that day, nobody can pay me enough to watch The Ring again or mess with anything to do with The Ring. After this experience, there is no way.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
Okay, so I have a story and it does sound completely unbelievable, but I swear it's true. So this is about the time that I saw a shadow person in my waking life. And I feel like you hear about them all the time, that like people see them in their sleep during sleep paralysis. And that sounds super scary, but I saw it in my waking life, you know, completely like the middle of the day. So this happened a while ago when I was like 18. And I'll set the scene for you a little bit. So basically what was happening was like I was getting ready to go to my friend's house for a sleepover and her parents were out of town, so you know we were gonna have some people over, have some drinks. Like the vibes were immaculate, like my headspace great. I was very excited. And I'll set up like I'll let you, like this is how the layout of my house was. So like my bedroom mirror is here, and then like my door is right here, and then across the hall is my parents' door, and if both of our doors are open, I can look right into it and see into their room. So I'm facing the mirror doing I think I was like straightening my hair and like listening to Nicki Minaj, like probably rapping along to Super Bass or something. And out of my peripheral, I see someone standing in my parents' room, and at this time, nobody was home. Just my brother was downstairs playing video games, and then my mom was out running errands and she was going to drive me to my friend's house once she got home. So I knew for a fact that nobody was home. Or no one was home that would like fit the profile of what I saw. So I'm looking in the mirror doing my hair, and then I see someone, like a really tall person, standing in my parents' room out of the corner of my eye. So I turn to look, just half expecting nothing to be there, because like what would be there? So, you know, I'm like, like turn around, like turn and look. And there was like this 7 foot tall. So basically it like looked like this giant man, maybe. But then like it had like horns that like went like, they like curled inwards, like very like Maleficent style. So I turn and look. Oh, and then the color, and like it wasn't like there were no features on it. It was just like black, like like a color of black that I've never seen in real life. It was like somebody cut a chunk of reality out in the shape of this. So yeah, I'm doing my hair, see that, turn and look at it, and then I like looked back at the mirror at myself, kind of like how like if you saw something unbelievable, you would like turn to your friend, like, did you see that too? So I did that to myself in the mirror. And then I decided to look back because part of me was like, that's not real. I had a tiny hallucination. I don't know what I thought, but I was like, look back, and it's still standing there. And then it like starts to run at me. Like it like is like so still, just like staring. And then it like goes to run at me, to which I then slam my bedroom door shut, turn my hair straightener off, throw everything I need into my sleepover bag, and then like just terrified, I'm like, holy shit, my brother's downstairs. My brother's downstairs. That thing is loose in the house. It's loose in the house. What if it's, or also slash, I was like a little scared it was going to be like right at my door. But then at the same time, I'm like, that wasn't real. That can't be real. So I open my door, nothing's there, and then I just like run downstairs and I tell my brother that like we have to go because mom is going to drive me to my sleepover, to which he was like, why do I have to come? And I was just because I didn't tell anyone about that thing for like, I don't think I brought it up to my family for like at least 3 years, maybe longer. Like I might have been in my mid-20s by the time I brought it up to my parents and let my family know about it, because I was always kind of scared it would like know somehow. It would be like, oh, you're talking about me. So yeah, anyways, that's the time I saw a shadow person in real life, and it was really weird. Still don't know what that was. And like there were always kind of like weird things going on in that house, but like nothing like that. Like as far as I'm concerned, no one else saw something like that. And yeah, I don't have an explanation for it. It was the weirdest thing I've ever seen and experienced. So that's my scary story to contribute to this trend. Okay, thanks.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true. I'll go first.
So this is not really a ghost story, but my dad lived with his grandpa for a short time when he was in middle school. And my dad's grandpa had some psychic abilities. And one day my dad's grandpa had a dream that my dad was going to go on a field trip and the bus was going to crash and 3 kids were going to die. And so my dad's grandpa refused to let my dad go on that field trip. So he didn't go. And the bus did crash and only 2 kids died.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true. I'll go first.
So, I don't really know if you would consider this like a ghost story or not, but back in 2018, so I was like a junior in high school, I got a Stranger Things Ouija board. And I decided it would be a fun idea to go to my hometown's biggest graveyard on Halloween to use said Ouija board. And so we do so. Me and 2 other homegirls go to this graveyard. And before I go more further along about this story, I just kind of want to explain the layout of this graveyard just because it's a little different than some. So pretty much there was a parking lot at the bottom of the like hill, I guess you could say, and you would have to hike all the way up. I want to say it's about half a mile to a mile long to get to the cemetery. So your car's here. You have to walk all the way up there, right? So, and this graveyard is about like 2 miles long. It is huge, 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 and one of the oldest graveyards that we have around my area. So we park the car and we're, just being young and dumb and just taking like silly little photos and, just saying silly little things. Probably not in the best intentions, unfortunately, just because we were young and dumb. But we finally get to the graveyard, and the first section of the graveyard we went to, we kind of had a little scare. So we heard like noises, and it sounded like leaves, like rustling and stuff. So it could have been an animal. But then we saw like two lights that didn't look like flashlights, and so we like booked it and didn't go back to that side of the graveyard for that time being. And we played with the Ouija board. I mean, I don't really remember anything too crazy happening with the Ouija board, to be honest with you. I think we got like a high and maybe some letters that didn't spell anything. But it was still like, scary and spooky because we were in a graveyard. And at one point, I think we even went into the visitor spot. Not proud to say this. Went into like the visitor like building and we wrote like 666 in it. Yeah. Just really disrespectful, dumb shit. Not proud of it. But we finally decide we're done and we're gonna partake in like the gardening. And so we do so. We walk all the way back down to the hill to the car. And we're smoking, gardening, hanging out. And I want to say we did that for about 20 minutes until it started to rain. So we obviously, after it started to rain, we wanted to get inside the car. So me and the homegirl that wasn't driving were like already by the doors that we wanted to get in to the car. And we're like telling the homegirl that has the car, that has the keys, like, hey girl, unlock the car, like we're ready. And she's like, I can't find the keys, haha. And we're like, haha, you're so silly, just like unlock the car. No, she's like, guys, I don't know where my keys are. And mind you, like they were on a lanyard, like one of the like ones that you can wear around your neck. Like it was pretty easy to see that the keys were indeed not there. So we planned for the two homegirls to go to the other side of the graveyard and to look for her keys, and I would go by myself down the hill and all the way back up and to the first part of the graveyard that we had like originally ran away from. And I'm walking around all of the first part of the graveyard, and I get to the place, like the grave where we saw the lights. And mind you, like there's a decent amount of path like in this certain area of the graveyard. Like we weren't stepping on any graves or anything, or at least at this part of the graveyard. And I noticed that there are her keys literally on top of a grave. And mind you, like we were near this grave, yes, but we were never on top of this grave. Yeah, maybe the keys could have flung a certain way and like landed like that, but I don't know. It really sketched me out, and I was even scared to like grab the keys off of the grave just because I was just like, fuck, I don't know. I don't want no fucking hand coming up or nothing. I was fucking freaking out. But I ended up grabbing the keys and found the homegirls eventually. And we vowed we would never be that disrespectful in a graveyard ever again. We got instant karma, immediately learned our lessons. And yeah. So don't play with Ouija boards or be disrespectful to the dead, ever. It's not a bright idea. But thank you for listening, and I will hopefully be having more of these story times here soon.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
This is the story of how a demon boy made my city shake. Now, I tried to stitch the creator's original video about ghost stories, but the sound and everything is messed up, so she put this one up to give people a better chance of trying to tell their story. So I never told many people this story, but when I tried to record it, it kept like not recording the audio, so now I'm gonna give you the story. So the year is like 2011. I'm between like 11 and 12 years old. Me and my mom and my brother were living with my aunt and her daughters, who so happen to be black witches. That's a different story. Let me know if y'all want me to get into that. I didn't find this out until after everything that happened. So just a little bit of a backstory. I would play a lot with the youngest daughter. She was a few years older than me, but me and her would spend a lot of time together. The older daughter lived upstairs. She would interact with us, we would have fun and everything like that. She kind of lived her own life. So this is the way that the house is set up so you can understand the story. We're living in a duplex, right? That's when it's like a full home that's cut into 2 levels, and then each level is technically like an apartment. So if you come in through the front door, there was an additional front door as soon as you come in, and there's steps that go up. The steps that go up is our upstairs neighbor's house. We don't interact with her. And when you come into the house, you get the living room, dining area, kitchen, and basement is our house. Now, it's only 3 rooms in there, and we're all kind of like sharing rooms. So this is how it started. It started with my aunt, right? She had her bedroom door open while she was asleep, and she heard somebody whispering her name at the door. We'll say her name is Deborah because she passed away. So she hears Deborah, Deborah at her door. She hears it, she disregards it, she says, leave me alone, right? Rolls over, goes to sleep. Now, my aunt, she couldn't use her arms were completely paralyzed because she had ALS. So the youngest daughter stayed in the bedroom across from her, so she had, easy access to come and help her mom whenever she wanted to. So then my cousin says that she heard somebody walking up the basement steps towards the top floor in the middle of the night, and she thought it was my mom coming to check on her mom. But my mom was in the room with me. Now, I was the last one up in the house because I was watching a movie. It was 3 o'clock in the morning. I was watching a movie on a laptop, so the movie had just went off. My mom's asleep on the floor with her boyfriend on the air mattress. I'm sleeping on the couch next to them. The entire wall next to this couch is a mirror, right? Now, the house was already a lot of freaky shit going on in that house, and we had played hide and go seek in the house before, and we played it in the dark, and I saw a little boy in the dark, and he was staring at me, and I was staring at him, and I got freaked out, and I quit the game. My mom had also seen a little boy peeking in the room after she got out of the shower. She seen him in the mirror, right? There was no little boy in the house. And my cousins had told me, jokingly, it's a little boy in here and he likes you, right? This is all over a series of events. Let me know if y'all want those stories. So on this particular night, I'm up. It's pitch black in here, right? So I'm like, okay, it's about time for me to go to sleep. I'm scared. So I go to lay down, but I don't want to look in the mirror because I'm scared I'm going to see something, right? So I get under the covers and I'm facing like the inside of the couch. Now, I didn't hear any doors open, but I heard someone start to walk into the room. Like you could hear the depression on the wood, like you could hear the creaking in the steps, and it sounded like some pretty big feet. Like we had a dog in the house. So I'm like, is it the dog? No, because you can hear the ksh when the dog. It was not a dog. It was some solid feet walking on the ground, right? So I'm scared. My heart's pounding. I'm holding my breath, right? Because I'm just listening. Mind you, these footsteps are about 4 feet away from me. So it's 4 feet away from me and I'm hearing it, right? Then I hear them come around. I hear the footsteps come around the bottom of my mom's air mattress that's on the floor. Then I hear like a little, it sounds like the rubber from the air mattress is like rubbing against the floor a little bit, like they were moving around on the air mattress or whatever. I didn't think nothing of that point. But he did bring up to her that following morning, he was pissed off because he was like, why were you pulling on my foot trying to wake me up? And she was like, how the hell would I be pulling on your foot if we're laying face to face? So I hear that little sound, and the footsteps come around the air mattress to my side, right? Now the footsteps are literally like right here, still under the covers. Eyes wide open, I'm not asleep. Eyes are wide open, holding my breath, heart pounding, and all I could hear is these steps, right? And then it gets silent, gets dead silent. The covers start to depress down onto me, and I swear to God on my life, this is the closest experience I've ever had with a ghost. And my heart is pounding. I'm under the covers, and all on this side of my face, I felt the breath flow off of my face. I heard it in my ear. Oh my God, when I tell y'all I freaked the fuck out, I threw the covers back. I'm sitting up, instant panic attack. Panicking, screaming, crying. My mom gets up. She's like, what's going on? What's going on? I'm like, no, something's breathing on me. Something's breathing in my ear. She's like, no, it's a nightmare. It's a bad dream. I'm like, no, I'm not going to sleep. This is not a nightmare. Like, I'm freaking out, crying, tears. Like, she had to get up, cut the lights on, all of that, and try to be like, it's just a dream. We're not going to talk about it or whatever, because she had a feeling something was going on too, but she didn't want to give it any attention. So the next day we're standing in my aunt's room, right? It's a hot day, it's summertime, so we're standing there, we got the door open. And we're talking about the series of events that happened the night before, where we're kind of like putting it all together, like, okay, something was walking around this house. So my mom lifts up her shirt, and she's, you know, she just standing there like this because it's hot, she's sweating. She lifts up her shirt, and then she was like, ah, because she said it felt like something was stinging on her stomach, because she looked down and she had 3 claw marks going across her stomach, thin claw marks, right? So we're looking at that like, what? Maybe it was an accident. Did you scratch yourself with your ring? Whatever, right? In the middle of talking about this, she looks at my older cousin's back while her back is turned, and she has 3 claw marks down her back. She didn't even feel them on her back. So we're looking like, how'd you get this on your back? Whatever, whatever. So everybody else gets to looking around, right? Trying to see what's up with them. My cousin, who was closer to my age, she had 3 claw marks from her knee to her ankle on her right leg. My aunt, who couldn't use her arms at all and was in bed all night, had a burn mark, like a cigarette burn, all the way underneath her boob, like somebody put out a cigarette on her skin. I believe my mother's boyfriend had scratches like on his foot or his ankle, and I didn't have any scratches, right? While we're talking about how this shit's weird, the shades start swaying. So then my mom stops talking and she looks at me. We look at each other and we look at the dog because the dog was scratching, right? So we're like, maybe it was the vibration from the dog, whatever, trying to write it off, right? She keeps talking. Then the whole fucking dresser starts shaking. So we look at each other again, and the whole house, everything in that bitch, everything is swinging back and forth, and oh my God, it was crazy. My mom slings open the front door. She's like, stand in the doorway, stand in the doorway. So I'm standing in the doorway, and in the doorway, I'm looking directly into the mirror. And I'm looking at myself in the mirror, freaking the fuck out while the house is shaking. And my mom is behind me with the front door open like, this is not your house. You gotta get out of here. You don't have no rights over nobody in this house. Like, she's trying to banish the demon out of this bitch, right? I'm like, ain't no fucking way. Ain't no way this is real. So it stops, right? My cousins run up from downstairs. They're like, what's going on? Like, I thought I was just getting dizzy, about to pass out. Like, what's going on? My mom goes outside. There's other people outside. She's like, did y'all feel that? Did y'all feel that? Everybody's like, yeah, what the fuck? What was that? For the first time in the history that I've heard of in Baltimore, there was an earthquake. There was an earthquake during that conversation about the demon scratches in our house the night before. Everybody else who I asked, like, what were y'all doing during the earthquake? Like, what was going on that day? They were asleep, on the toilet. I'm the only one that was reminiscing on a motherfucking demonic attack before it made the fucking city shake. Okay, I'm not gonna attribute it to the spirit, but just know a lot of crazy shit happened after that. A lot of sleepwalking, a lot of nightmares, a lot of seeing shit, hearing shit. A lot of stories came from that time period. So let me know if y'all want to hear all the crazy shit that happened when I was living with some witches. But yeah, I don't really know, but that's my ghost story.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely...
I'll go first. When I was in high school, I was living with my mom and my sister, and we had a cute little house. There was a basement, and this is a story why I'm scared of all basements. My sister was like maybe 3 or 4. She would always look up in random corners of the house and talk and laugh, whatever. I just thought she had her own imaginary friends. Didn't really freak me out. But she would always say that she was too scared to go in the basement because the big, tall, scary man was down there and she was scared he was going to get her. And my mom just like, oh, it's okay. Like, no one's down there. Tried to play it off, which moms always do. Totally get it now that I'm a mom. Never thought anything of it. My sister refused to go downstairs all the time. She'd always stand at the top of the stairs and like talk down there and act scared and run away. Well, when we were moving, we got everything out from the basement and we were pulling out stuff from underneath the stairs that was ours, and tucked in the very, very back corner of the stairs was like this little box. And I'm like, that's not mine. And my mom's like, it's not mine either. Let's take it out. Well, we unpacked the box and there was like an old army type uniform. And I looked at my mom and she looked at me. She's like, we probably should not be taking this out of here. We did look at it. It was a very, very tall uniform. And I remember my sister saying there was a really tall, scary man downstairs. Instantly put it back in the box, put it back underneath the stairs. We wanted nothing to do with that, but I have plenty of more scary stories from that house, along with every other house I've lived in. If y'all want to hear more, let me know.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely...
Okay, so I lived in Salem, Massachusetts for a little bit under a year. And I'm a spooky girl, okay? My mom is a spooky girl. My mom gave me my first deck of tarot cards when I was in the 7th grade, and she also gave me her original Parker Brothers Ouija board. I'll get there. If you can handle long-form content, I'll get there. So, like, I can pick up on the vibes of places, like, very easily. Like, when I was touring apartments in Salem, like, I know the whole thing with the town is, like, completely commercializing, like, an absolute atrocity that happened. But, like, that shit's no fucking joke. So, like, one of the apartments we toured was actually in Gallows Hill, which is right off 95, like, next to the cemetery. And I walked in, and the vibes were sinister. And I asked the realtor, I was like, do you think this apartment's haunted? Knowing full fucking well it was. And he was like, would you want it if it was? And I was like, no. Maybe. But I did not end up going with that apartment. I went with a different one, and I got, like, I knew that there were presences, plural, because this building was built in 1875 and is super old. So before we even move a single thing, not a suitcase, not a piece of furniture, we unlock the door and open it, and there's like a glass orb on the ground, and we were both like, what is that? My partner goes to pick it up, and I'm like, can I see it? And they were like, no, it's mine, which is very out of character for them. And they were like, I'm so sorry, I don't know what that was, here you go. And I look at the orb, and there's a tiny L scratched into the orb, and I was like, oh, you're so right, L for Liam, this is yours. And let me say, I am ignorant enough to bring a Ouija board into a haunted apartment, but I am not ignorant enough to say that that fucking orb leaves the apartment, because that shit stays right here. And so from that point on, I was like, okay, they like Liam, it's still sort of a toss-up on me. And when I brought the Ouija board in, I didn't notice it at first, but it just felt so crowded in the room that it was in, and it just felt more and more crowded the closer you would get to the Ouija board. Like, I didn't use it, but they knew it was there. And then I go to rehab, as one does, and I come back, and I'm like, get this fucking shit out of my apartment. Somewhere in between that span of time and after I got it out, I think it was just too late for me. I got into 2 car accidents within the span of less than 60 days, and I was not at fault for either of them. So I gave them to a friend, put it in safe hands, and she got into 2 car accidents. But after the Ouija board was gone, like, it was sort of quieting down, but it was like the typical haunted house, like, stuff. Like, we'd be sitting in our bedroom and we'd hear, like, chairs scooching around in the kitchen, or, like, stuff moving around, like, coming back into a room being like, I didn't put that there. And there were also, like, weird bumps and noises coming from the walls and from the ceiling. But whenever you take out your phone to try and record it, of course it stopped. And I know for a fact that this was happening to the tenant below me, because they contacted my landlady and they were like, hey, there are weird noises coming from upstairs and from, like, in the walls. My landlady texted me and she's like, do you have, like, any appliances running or something? And I was like, no, I have a noise machine. So a maintenance guy comes in and finds nothing, of course. And then, like, closer to me moving out of the apartment, I had a really horrible nightmare. I have night terrors, okay? I have them less now that I'm not living in that apartment / working retail, but I've had some fucking horrifying nightmares. But in this dream, the tenant who lives above me was like, oh, it's a good thing you weren't home last night, because Eleanor was really trying to get in. And I was like, who the fuck is that? And then I just have this vision of this woman who's either, I don't know if it's a night dress or a hospital gown, like, banging on the door, being like, let me in, let me in. That shit. I woke up cold fucking sweat, and I knew, I was like, this has something to do with the property, and I don't know what, and I was too much of a weenie to ask my upstairs neighbor about it, but I did some independent snooping. And so apparently that house was built by Nicholas Noyes, Noyes, who, upon further inspection, was the colonial minister that oversaw the Salem witch trials. He owns property in Salem and also Danvers, because Danvers was old Salem. And so I was like, can't be good. Who the fuck is Eleanor, though? Look down the family tree. She died in 2010. Yeah. On a separate note, I would like to thank the witch who gave me some crystal advice. And now I can't go anywhere without this. There's really so much to this. I forgot to add that whenever I would shower, my showers, even if they started hot, they would always end cold, or they wouldn't get hot at all. And my partner was like, I don't have that problem. And they've showered right after me, and it hasn't been a problem. And if I showered with them in the room, it wasn't a problem. It's just so bizarre. Just don't fuck around with Ouija boards. Just don't. And Caitlin, if you're seeing this, I will text you my address, so you can mail that to me, because I'll be damned if I'm taking that shit on a plane. I feel like I have to be buried with it or something. Like, I can't get rid of it. So, just keep that shit wrapped in white cloth, I guess.
Alright, I'm a little late to the party on this one, but I wanted to share my story, and I hope you find it just as creepy as I do. Just for some background, my dad had this house built in the 90s, and no one else has lived here, just our family. So I don't know why there are spirits here, but there definitely are some. Okay, this story takes place a few summers ago. I was home from college, and I was asleep in my bedroom. It was really early in the morning. The sun was just starting to rise, and I was kind of like in and out of sleep at this point, but still, you know, very, very groggy and not fully aware of like what was going on. You know, I just knew it was early. I heard someone come into my room. I had this necklace hanging up against the door, and it would like clank up against the door whenever someone opened it, and so that kind of stirred me awake, and my back was facing the door, so I didn't see who came in. When I opened up my eyes, I just saw what time it was. It was like 6:30, I think, and I was like, it's early. Why is like my mom in my room? Assuming it was my mom. But they didn't say anything at first, and a couple minutes passed, or just a couple moments. I mean, it was so early that I'm like, I was in and out, right? So I'm just like, why aren't they saying anything? But I could sense someone standing there, and they go, Molly. Very like breathy, sing-songy woman's voice. I don't reply, I just stay on my side, and I kept my eyes closed, and I feel them poke me in my lower back. It felt like a long acrylic kind of nail, and I'll never forget the sensation. Like, you know when someone pokes you and like it kind of stings after? I felt that in my lower back, and it felt like a real human finger. So I was like, maybe it's my mom or something. Like, what the heck, 'cause my mom has acrylic nails. But I still didn't turn over because I'm like, she would, you know, continue to say something. But when I didn't do anything, they go, okay, bye. And then it just kind of like dawned on me that that wasn't my mom. And I don't think it was one of my sisters. And so I like flip over and I look, and nobody's there, and my door is closed. I still don't know who it was to this day, because when I go downstairs a couple hours later, I fell back asleep magically. I asked my mom, like, why'd you come into my room so early this morning? And she's like, I didn't. I just woke up. So I don't know who that was. Yeah, it was great though.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
I have been umming and ahhing about whether or not I want to do this video for two reasons. One, the Audacity Stitch trend has been all over my For You page this weekend, but I'm like a month late to it being cool to talk about, and that gives me the ick. But also, I don't make content on this channel anymore, so I don't know if anyone's here or if anyone cares, but then I just sort of figured this story is so crazy that actually it's quite nice to put it in a video so that I don't forget any details, because it wasn't that long ago. And I've told my friends and I've told some family, and everyone's like, that is nuts. So I was like, well, if anyone does care about it, then we can have a conversation about it and I can share a couple more stories. But to give context, I have always felt like the heebie-jeebies, do you know what I mean? Like a sixth sense, spidey sense. Something's going on. Like, I would never go upstairs on my own. I would always have to be escorted because I'd feel like there's somebody watching me in the hallway, little things like that, like going on holiday feeling like I'm not alone, loads of little things. But it really got validated like 2 years ago, where my grandma on my mum's side passed away, and it was kind of sudden. She lived like 3 hours away, so we didn't get the chance to go up there. We were told there was more time, and it kind of happened quite quickly, and we were like, so anyway, probably like 2 or 3 weeks after she had passed, my mum had gone up to the house and seen my uncle, and they had cleared things at the house. I didn't go. Actually, none of us did. It was just my mum. But I had this super vivid dream, like, you know, the type where you feel like it's real. It was wild. And basically in this dream, it's me, my brother, and my grandma, who we call May. So it's me, James, and May. And we're in May's house. In my head, it's her house. In actuality, it's like not her house at all. It just, in my head it was. And she's walking around clear as day, and she's talking to me and James are clearing things out of her house in my dream. And she's going, yeah, you know, like, now that I'm past, now that I've gone, there's some things I want you to have, and blah blah. And I was like, me and James are going, May, like, stop being silly, don't talk like that, like, dismissing it. And she's going, no, we need to like face the fact. And she was really aware, talking to me and James, she was really aware that she was no longer part of this world. Right? She then goes, come with me, I've got some things I want to show you. And we're like, okay. So we walk upstairs, and on the bed is our cat, and our cat had passed away like 2 years before my grandma had. And I was like, Dango, the big fat ginger Fluff was on the bed, and I was like, no way, Dango, oh my god. And I went over and I was snuggling with him, and I was like, May, this is so cute. And behind me, May and James are talking, and she's going, yeah, there's a few things that I really want to show you. And James, all of a sudden, James behind me is going, oh my god. And I was like, what? And he's like, look what May's just given me. And he turns around a box, and there's like an old men's watch. And I was like, that's cool, where's that come from? And May was like, it's your granddad's, you should have it, it's yours. And I was like, okay, well, I don't know. And then she goes, Victoria, there's something I really need you to have. And she's going, you know, there's jewelry, there's so much, but like, there's this one thing that I really want you to have. She roots around in the wardrobe, and she pulls that out, and she is emphatic about it, like, she is buzzing, and she's like, you need to have this. And I look down, and it's a matchbox, and I was like, that is so weird. James goes, what is that? And I was like, I don't know. And May's going, it's a matchbox, it's like so old, your granddad gave this, you have to have it. She was so adamant that I had to have this little matchbox, and I was like, okay. And then I woke up, and I was like, that was crazy vivid, like, so much detail, so much communication, so much like awareness that she was no longer here. I have to tell someone. So I went onto my group chat with my mum and my brother, and I was like, guys, this is gonna sound real freaky, and hear me out, but I've just had a crazy dream. Recounted the dream to them, and my mum was like, I don't know, like, your uncle has the watch, like, that's nothing new, and I don't know anything about this matchbox. And I was like, yeah, I figured that's the case, but just in case you see anything, let me know. But it's probably nothing like this has ever happened before, FYI. Like, I've never hallucinated or had nothing like that. So this was like so random. Anyway, 2 days later, me and my mum go to a cafe, and we sat down, we're chatting away, having a coffee, and she goes, that dream that you had? And I was like, yeah. And she was like, tell me about it. So I explained the story, and she was like, can you describe what you saw? And I was like, well, you know, she was talking about like jewelry, but also she got this matchbox out, and she was so excited about it. And I was like, it was little it's from Little. It was little, it was super old, like, you could tell that it used to be white, but now it's kind of like tea stained, had like red markings on it, but I didn't see anything inside. She just wanted me to have it. And she was like, you know how I went to May's house like 2 weeks ago to go and clear things out with your uncle? And I was like, yeah. She was like, I found a matchbox. And I was like, what? I was like, am I gifted? What's going on? And I was like, no way. And she was like, yeah, but it just had like pearls in it. And I was like, what? And she was like, yeah, like looks like a necklace, like pearls or bracelets or something had been broken, and they were all kept in this matchbox. And I was like, fuck off. It's like, she told me about jewelry, and she wanted me to have this. That's jewelry in that matchbox. I was like, I was like, please tell me you've got it. And she was like, no, I threw it in like a bag that's going to the charity shop. I just thought it was like trash. And I was like, do you know what? It happens. Maybe there was something there, who knows. Anyway, my mum was obviously thinking about this the whole way home, and she calls my uncle, and she goes, Phil, have you got that those bags of the charity like stuff, and he was like, well, I gave it to charity like yesterday morning. And she told him the story, and he was like, okay, well, that's kind of weird. Here's the number to the charity shop, so call him. And she calls this guy, and there's probably like I don't know how many bin bags. There's a lot of bin bags of stuff in there, like clothes, items, ornaments, all sorts of stuff that you just don't have any use for. We kept the sentimental bit, you know what I mean? And she calls this guy who she's never spoken to, and she goes, I'm going to sound mental, but my brother came in here 2 days ago with a load of bags, and there's one thing. And she told him the story, and he was like, oh yeah, I know that matchbox. It's got like pearls in it. Yeah, I thought it was rubbish, but I just kept it to like one side for some reason. And she was like, no way. It's like, why would you keep that to one side? There's just a like grotty old matchbox with like broken part. Like, why would you? I don't get it. Anyway, so she then, next time she goes up to where my my uncle lives and where my grandma lived, she goes to this charity shop, and he keeps them for her, and she gives them, and she shows me this matchbox, and I was like, get in the bin. That is the exact thing that I explained. I couldn't believe it. It was freaking me out. And then she was like, and also she was like, behind closed doors, because I didn't want to like freak you out, I've been looking through photo albums to try and figure out what the pearls are. And she was like, they're not real. But when I got to the wedding photos of my granddad and my grandma, she's wearing a pearl necklace with those pearls. And so, to make sure that you've got the receipts, because I know some of you are going to call shit, and that's fair enough, because I would, but I swear on my dog's life, she brings me this matchbox, and I put it in this little, I got this like ornament made. Look, the tea stained with the red, it's old, and there's a couple of the leftover pearls, because we got them made back into the necklace that was on her neck for the wedding. So these are like the pearls that were in the matchbox, and there she is. This is what my grandma handed to me in my dream. Just to round this up, because I realised I didn't say it, the like logistical brain that my other half and my dad have been doing is like, you obviously have seen it. I have never been through her wardrobes. I never went through her stuff. I never went through cupboards. Like, I just had never done it. I probably stayed in her room 3 times when we stayed over, and I was literally in the room, in bed, in toilet, leave. That's it. So I have never been through her house. I have no recollection of any matchbox or watch or anything, of like nothing, absolutely nothing. So the whole thing's crazy. I am, you know, gifted queen. Anyway, this is like an 8-minute TikTok, so that's enough now. Anyway, okay, bye.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
So this is my first TikTok, but I saw this going around and I thought I'd add my stories. Well, one of my stories. I have a few. So just to preface this, I'm very sensitive. I've felt things. I've always believed in spirits or the other world way before I even knew what it was. I grew up hearing about things and just having my own experiences from the time I was about 4 or 5 that I can remember. So growing up, I've just always known about these things and just been really sensitive to it. It even got really bad to the point where I just asked God. I was like, look, I don't want this anymore. You have got to take this, whatever this is, whether it's a gift or whatever, I don't want it. So I'm from Los Angeles, and I kind of grew up in different parts of LA. And one place that I lived the longest had so many things happen. And I wasn't the only person to experience these things in this house. So this house was like a duplex. It was a really old house. And the people that we were renting from, they became like family. Grandfather, grandmother figure, their family became our family. We were just really close-knit. So fast forward, I'm about 12, 13, and every day I come home and I walk home by myself, and my mom's not there because she works in Santa Monica, which is like maybe an hour or 2 away from our house, and I get home before she does. So I get home and I start to feel like I'm not alone, like I'm being watched, So I'm like, oh, whatever. Until one day, I get the feeling I'm up the stairs, and because there was like a little sunroom at the bottom, because like I said, this was a duplex, so we had the smaller of the two. There was a little sunroom at the bottom, then some stairs to your left that went up, and then everything else was like at the top of the duplex. So the rooms, the bathroom, the kitchen, all that. So there was a bathroom right off the stairs. And then if you go straight down the hall was my room. There's a living room on this side of my room, and then my mom's room and the kitchen and another sunroom at the back of the house. So like I said, I would get home and I wasn't seeing anything or experiencing anything after school at that point. But I just felt like I wasn't alone, felt like I was being watched, so forth and so forth. So this one day I just decided, I'm gonna turn around. I'm halfway through the hallway, kind of like where the bathroom stops, the doorway of the bathroom stops, and I turn around and I see this figure. It's sort of grayish looking, and it's of a young man who had to be like in his teens, wearing a Letterman's jacket. He felt like he was from a different era, and I had experienced something similar to that, seeing things from a different era when I was like a toddler. So I see this guy, and I'm just sort of like, okay, and he's sort of like on the stairs. The only thing about him is like I said, he's wearing a Letterman jacket, like a white t-shirt, some jeans, and like some Converse looking shoes, what I'm imagining, because I'm kind of getting like a grayish outline or like a gray tinge to him. He's not fully in color, he's not fully saturated, but I can tell the colors and I can tell the clothing. The only thing is, this guy doesn't have eyes. Where his eyes should be, like I can see nose, I can see a mouth, I can see facial structure, and he seems like he's Caucasian, but there are no eyes, like just hollow gray orbs. So I'm like, okay. And like I said, I had been experiencing things since I was a toddler, from the things that I can remember. So I wasn't really scared. I was just like, okay, now I know why I've been feeling this way. There's this guy, this young man, he seemed like a teenager, maybe no more than like 17, 18. So I go in my room and I'm like, okay, whatever. I close my door. This happens for weeks. And this guy, each time I turn around, he's closer than he was before. So like he was on the stairs, then he's kind of at the landing, then he's in the hallway. And each time I turn around, every time I get home from school and I turn around to see where this young man is, he's closer than he was the day before. So this happens for weeks. And prior to this, I had been seeing crows. I love crows. I'm not afraid of them. I think they're part of my spirit guides. I don't know, but I feel that. And there was always a crow that would sit outside by this laundromat on the power line and would just crow at me. And every time that the crow would crow at me would be the days that I would see him. Because it wasn't like, I'd see him like maybe 3 days out of the week. It wasn't like constant, but I constantly felt like he was there. One day I was walking home. My little crow friend wasn't there. That was the last time I saw the young man in the hallway. Because he was no longer on the stairs. He was like inching his way to my room. And that was the last time I saw him. And he never scared me. Up until that point, I hadn't had anything to like scare me. I'd heard noises and seen things, and nothing ever scared me up until that point, because I did have a really scary incident. But this young man, he just seemed like I don't know if he was watching over me or if he was like needed something or he wanted me to acknowledge him, which I always did. And I was just always like, okay, hi, okay, I'm going to my room now. And then the last time that I saw that crow was the last time I saw that young man. Super interesting. If you want to hear more stories like that, I have a lot.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
So a lot of people say that their house is haunted. I actually know that my house is haunted. We've been living here for 5.5 years. A lot of crazy things have happened. About 3 years ago, we had a ghost busting team come out and gather evidence. And so we have a lot of stories to tell. But I want to tell you about the very first thing that ever happened to me living in this house. So it was October of 2018, and my husband and I had just sold our house where we were living, and we were in the process of moving. We moved 5.5 hours away, and we were going back and forth making trips with the U-Haul, and we were really tired because we're old. So we decided to split up to get more done. So I stayed at the new house. He went back to the old house. And just so you know, I wasn't afraid to stay at this house by myself. We hadn't experienced anything up until that point. And I'm an introvert by nature, so I was kind of looking forward to being alone. So that very first night that I was on my own, I was laying in bed watching Netflix with my dog, and I was getting tired, so I reached over my dog and I turned the light off, and then I turned the television off, and no sooner did my head hit the pillow, I heard what sounded like a rubber ball bouncing and then rolling down the hallway. Now, so that you can kind of get a picture of what was happening, we have a long hallway, and at the very end of it is the master bedroom. And then there's a straight shot from the beginning of the hallway all the way into the master bedroom. It's a long hallway. So I reached over, I flipped the light back on, I looked over my dog, and I see a little blue ball rolling into the bedroom. It bounced off the closet door and then came to a rest. And my dog and I were just looking at each other like, what? So I jump out of bed, I pick up the ball, and I put it on the nightstand, and I'm thinking to myself, well, you better go into the hallway to see if someone's in there. Now, unfortunately, the only light switch to the hallway is at the very end of the hallway. And I was a little hesitant because the hallway was dark. I mean, it was dark, darker than dark, darker than I think it's ever been since. So I opened the door that led to the kitchen, and I turned that light on so that I could see at least where I was walking. And I stepped back into the hallway. It was very dimly lit, and I was staring at the end of the hallway, and I was trying to focus because it was that dark. And I'm trying to have my eyes adjust to the darkness, and I thought that I saw something move. So I took a couple steps forward, and I just stood there staring while my eyes focused. And all of a sudden, what comes into focus is the silhouette of a woman. A very short, very plump woman. And I couldn't see features. She said absolutely nothing. She was just a solid black mass. I could tell that she was wearing a dress, and I could tell that her hair was up. And that's it. I said nothing. She said nothing. And I just stood there, and I stared, and I blinked, and I stared, and my heart was beating so fast. And then as soon as she appeared, she was gone. And the hallway was black. Very dark, darker than I had ever seen. It's hard to explain, but it was like nothingness. And the air was very still. It was creepy. It felt weird. The vibe had shifted, and it felt weird. So I thought, okay, well, that just happened. So I turned around, I went into the bedroom, I closed the door, and my dog and I slept with the light on that night. And so that's the story of the very first thing that ever happened to me. But like I said, I have a lot of stories about this house. So if you want to hear more, comment, let me know. Thanks for watching. Bye.
A ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
So this is like my 5th attempt trying to make this video. Maybe that's a sign of the universe, but I'm stubborn. I'm going to keep trying here. I recorded and there's just no sound. So I had to get creative here and figure it out. But so I want to start off by sharing my story. And I can start off and preface this by saying that I had a terrible childhood. And it wasn't because my parents were terrible parents. They were amazing parents. You know, my mother, God rest her soul, was my best friend. Beautiful parents. I couldn't ask for better. The problem is that I could see the dead. And I can see the dead since a very young age. And when you mix that gift with moving into a home that's completely haunted and had a portal where a bunch of spirits could come through, some human and some not, it becomes a problem. And so I'll start with saying my father worked nights when I was a little girl. And he applied to the police academy. He was waiting for a response. And basically they were also trying to purchase their first home. And back in the 80s, buying a property was all about cash, how much money you had. And so my parents were short about maybe $8,000 to be able to purchase the home that they wanted, and be approved for it. So we moved into a rental home. We just switched from where we were at and we moved into a rental house. And let me tell you, when you mix my gift and then you mix basically a home that has all those pre-existing conditions that we didn't know about, it became a lot. And so it didn't start heavy in the beginning. And I do remember that. I remember, there were elderly people that I would talk to and just different types of spirits, but it was never anything too crazy in the beginning. Now, when we first moved in, just things started to happen, right? But it was slow. It was like, just your random key missing, your clothes missing, things being moved out of place. And so initially my mother thought my dad was moving this stuff. And then my dad thought it was my mother. And then they both thought that it was either myself or my sister. And it was not the case. And so over time, the energy in the home started to change. And my parents started to argue, which was very rare. My parents never really fought or argued, but they started to. And, basically what happened was, they were constantly arguing and fighting with each other. And one day they'd had an argument the night before. And my dad said a few things that my mom didn't like, so he slept on the couch, right? So she got up, still angry at him, and made us breakfast. And made him breakfast because he had to go to work. And took us to school, and she came home. And she came home to take a shower. Because she was angry the night before and she just went to bed, and she usually showers at night. So she got there, she went in, and she's in the shower, and all of a sudden she hears my dad walking, and she doesn't think anything of it. He busts in through the bathroom, and he's just looking. He's just searching, like he's just throwing things everywhere. He's looking through the hamper. He's shaking out pants. And she's like, "What's wrong? What are you looking for?" And he did not answer her. And he's still doing it. So she just turns off the shower. She grabs the towel. She starts to wrap her stuff around it. She looks up. She goes, "What is wrong? What are you looking for? Answer me." And she said that he literally stopped, like in mid-shake of pants, threw the pants on the floor, and gave her the evilest look that she'd ever seen. Okay, and I mean evil. She said that every hair in her body just like this frightening, like heart-dropping feeling came out of her. Like she was terrified, and all the hairs in the back of her neck and everything just stood up. And he just looked at her, and by this point, she's about to step out of the shower. She's all wrapped up. He starts to, like, he barges out of the bathroom. And so she's following him. She's like, "Hun, what is wrong? Like, what? Talk to me. What are you looking for? Let me help you." And so he's walking, and now he starts walking down the hallway. And as he's walking down the hallway, towards the kitchen, you have to pass, the living room, and then the dining room, and then there's the kitchen. So in the direction that he went, there's no way out. So you could either go left or right once you enter through the passageway. So he goes left, right? And she's like right on his trail. She's like, "Will you just respond to me?" And he goes in the kitchen and he makes the left, which is where there's no exit. And when she steps into the kitchen and she goes to go in the direction that he's at, there's no one there. No one there. My mother said that at that moment, she was done. Like, she'd had other encounters, and she didn't really like to talk about this. And so at this point, she just was terrified. She said her heart dropped. She started to like get chills, and like she wanted to scream. And as she's feeling this overwhelming feeling of knowing that her husband, that she was just following from the bathroom, was just there and is now no longer there, she freaked out. And she said that as she's about to turn away to go back to the bedroom, the phone rings. And so she answers it. And my dad's like, oh, hey, I forgot to tell you that I get out at noon because it's just, they only need me for just a few hours. I can pick up the kids from school. And he's like, are you okay? She's like, I'm not okay. We'll talk when you get home. And she hung up on him. And she said she ran to the bedroom and she grabbed the first thing that she could from the closet and she ran out of the home and she went to my uncle's house. And then when my dad, her husband, got home, she told him, hey, we need to talk, but I don't want to do it here. And so she told him what happened. She was crying. She goes, we can't stay here. He goes, we'll get the house blessed. So they get the house blessed and the activity tripled. And now these things are bothering us continuously. They didn't care. They didn't care that we were there. Just freaking chairs moving. I mean, we'd be in mid talking and the freaking pantry doors would just, I mean, we had no choice. We were stuck. Back in the 80s, I mean, they didn't have any money, you know, and so we were stuck living. We slept together, okay, in the living room on pillows and little mini mattresses and stuff because we could not sleep in our own room. And I would tell the mom, the man, and I can remember them praying and crying. And then one day it got to the point where we literally had to run for our lives. Like, we had to leave the home quickly. And because there was just no way that we could stay there anymore. And it was basically fixated on my mom because my mom was very powerful. She was a very powerful woman. I mean, she was very about prayer. And she would say, you know, even though she was terrified, she would say, you know, I'm covered. We are covered. We are blessed. My child is blessed. My child is blessed. That she could see you. She knows you. She knows what you mean. And, you know, and we are blessed and we are covered and you will not do this. And so when she would say those things, right, you know, the activity would die down for a few days, but it would start right back up again. But we literally endured this experience for a very long time, and until 2 weeks before they were able to move, we wound up staying somewhere else. And then they purchased the home, and within a few days that we were moved in, we were out of that house. But the terror that we lived, and I can make a part 2 if you want to, the terror that we lived was not fun. And you know, it's scary, but I'm just glad that I had tough parents, supporting parents, and that their faith was strong enough to keep mine up.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true. I'll go first.
Okay, guys, here's part 2. So I kind of want to give a little bit of a clarification because I had a few people DM me wanting a little bit more details, and I'm more than happy to share those with you guys. So the first one being was, why did we transition? Why did we transition from where we were at to this home? And so I had explained in part 1, and I want to say that if you haven't watched part 1, I'd watch part 1 and then watch this one because it gives the clarification. So the reason why we transitioned was because we were living in an apartment and it was super cramped. It was small. And so my parents needed more space. And so in the meantime, my dad was also waiting for a response, right, from the police academy, which, spoiler alert, he did get in. He did become a police officer. He did serve 35 years, and he was able to successfully retire back in 2015. And then once my mother passed away, he did make the move from Philadelphia to Florida. So he's living his best life right now. But, you know, back then, you know, they were super cramped. They had children. Sorry, I'm getting a bunch of notifications. And just they needed the more space, bottom line. So my dad, I don't know if he heard it from a friend. Someone told him that there was a house that was going to become vacant, and that it was a good price, and that the people just that they left, and you know the owner now was kind of in a bind, and he needed to rent it as soon as possible. Lucky for them, you know, my dad had the money to be able to move in, and the guy like gave him a discount and all that, and I'll get into all of that later. But bottom line is that like the difference between moving from the apartment that we were living in and moving into the home with the, you know, 3 bedrooms and, you know, all of that space, especially a backyard, was not much of a difference. It was just like less than $100. So because the guy was in a bind, right? So long story short, it was a no-brainer. I personally would have taken the deal too if I needed more space, and because it was going to still enable him to save the money that was missing for him to be able to, you know, put the down payment for the home and get approved for the mortgage. So that's what happened. So that's why we moved. And then another thing I want to, that I was asked a lot about is I had explained that since I was, you know, a little girl, since I was a baby, I can see the debt, that I would see the debt. And so I thought I was clear, but I'm going to make it extra clear. As a child, as far back as I can remember, I could see the debt. Okay. Now, a lot of children, okay, when they're little, can see spirits. Okay. They can see into the other side. Some parents say, oh, that's an imaginary friend. They'll outgrow it. But my parents did the same thing, you know. However, I never did. So there are a few people who don't outgrow it. And I happen to be one of them. Now, when we moved into the home, I was in that funky phase of trying to understand why I was different. And I was only 5. And so I knew that I can see things that weren't there because my older sister couldn't see them. My parents couldn't see them. Some of my friends at school couldn't see them. And so I understood that that I was different. Okay? Which is a good thing. But I was in that funky phase where how do I explain it? Spirits give it an energy. Like for me, when I see them, there's an energy to them. And with that energy, it's like my brain, my body analyzes the type of spirit it is. If it's a friendly spirit, if it's a human spirit, and kind of the intentions around it, right? And so I was in that phase of learning the difference between a good spirit and a bad spirit, because you have both, and then non-human. And I was always stuck on that until I got older, but non-human being demonic. Okay? So I was in that phase. So when we moved into the home, and I gave my mother's story in the first video, I left off with the blessing of the home. Once the home was blessed, okay, the activity amplified, and I mean like it came back full force, okay, to the point where we were no longer safe sleeping in our bedrooms, okay. We literally, my mother, myself, and my sister slept in the living room together. Now, when my dad, if his hours were switched, because he worked at night, and sometimes he would have to work days. So when he was home at night, he slept with us in the living room too. So one of my experiences, and this is the one that I want to share this time, is when the activity picked up. It was a weekend. My dad was at work, and it was about maybe 9:30 in the morning, and it was a Saturday, so Tom and Jerry all the way. And I was sitting in the kitchenette, okay, in the kitchen. Now, we call them kitchenettes. It's a kitchenette. It's a kitchen table within, it's like a built-in bench within the kitchen, okay? And I was sitting there, and like I explained, the activity intensified, and so I was eating, and I went to grab my cup of milk, and it was a glass, and it moved. And so I look, and I see this thing, okay? And it was dark. It was a shadow. I don't want to say it, okay, but it was a shadow. And I look, and I freeze. And my mom's in the kitchen, and she's, still cooking because my sister, she was making her pancakes and everything. And so I get up, and I go to grab the milk again, and it moves to the other side. And so my sister starts, like, whimpering. And at this point, for me, I'm like, I'm getting kind of upset because I want my milk, And so my mother turns around, and she sees it again, because of course I go for it again, and she sees it again, and she goes, "That's it." And she turns off the stove, and she was like, in her broken English, because Puerto Rican mama, she's like, "I'm gonna tell you something, you son of a bitch. You leave my daughter alone. You leave her alone, and you don't mess with her, and you leave her have her milk." And so I go to reach, like, as I'm reaching, it's moving. She's talking to it in Spanglish, And so as I'm about to get it, it stops as she's talking. So it stops in the middle. And as I go to get it, guess what happened? Because my mom was, at this point, she was cursing at it in Spanish. The glass exploded. And I mean, like that. Milk all over me, glass. My sister, was screaming. My mom got scared at that point because she knew she pissed it off. And she grabbed me, she's checking me, and I'm like, I'm okay. And then she was like, she starts cursing at this point at it. And I'm like, no, mom, because I can see it getting larger and larger and larger and larger. And it's like getting mad that my mom is cursing at it and angry. And I'm like terrified because I see what's happening. And then I was like, we gotta go. Mommy, we leave. And my mom was like, okay. And so she goes to grab me, and my sister starts she can't see it. So she starts coming out of, the bench like this. And as my mom is she grabs a kitchen towel, and she's wiping me, and we're walking towards the door. And we heard a growl, like a loud growl. Okay. And I'm telling you, my mom did not lock the door. I don't think my sister was fully inside of the station wagon when she took off. But that's another part too. That's one of my experiences of many.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true. I'll go first.
I'm back. Sorry for the delay, guys. I was sick. I caught bronchitis, and I had to get a little bit better. But I'm going to continue with part 3 of the haunted house that we lived in when I was a little girl. If you haven't had a chance to watch part 1 or 2, I suggest you watch that first, and then you'll get a really good understanding of what happened, how things initiated, my mother's experience, and then my experience, and then this next experience that's going on. Basically, where I left off in part 2 was that my mother had been making my sister and I breakfast,
and this thing, because I don't want to give it a name, was like messing with me. It was moving the glass back and forth, and my mom got really mad at it. And while she was cursing at it, it just kept expanding and expanding, and then the glass broke all over me. Everybody caught a little bit of milk and glass, and we ran out of there. So my mother was able to get in contact with my dad that night, and told him what happened. He said, hey, just stay there, you know, when I get off, you know, we'll talk and we'll figure out what we can do, if we're going to stay there the night or if we can stay at a hotel. And so we wound up staying in a hotel for that night. And then the very next morning, we went back to the house, and when we walked in, it looked like a bomb had exploded. And I'm not exaggerating. All of the stuff in the house it looks like the house had been ransacked. Like someone broke in and just made a mess. In the kitchen, the stuff from inside of the cabinets, the refrigerator, the pantry, was all over the floor. There were eggs just broken. In the living room, the sofas were like flipped up. The cushions were all thrown everywhere. In my parents' bedroom, it was a mess. My bedroom, the whole house. So my dad called the cops because he was like, there's no way this thing did this. Like, you know, someone had to have broken in. And so he called the cops, made a report, and there was no forced entry. So again, you know, the cops were like, well, you know, you didn't stay here. We don't see any forced entry. You know, just try to keep your doors and your windows locked and make sure that, you know, if anything else happens, just call us. And so that was that, right? So then after cleaning up that ginormous mess, my parents had to talk with us and told us, hey, we're going to just, you know, we just need a little bit more time. We're really working hard on, you know, saving up money. My mom was a seamstress, so she made a lot of dresses. And I don't know if I'd explained that before, but she worked from home. And it was her season. She was doing prom dresses and wedding dresses at the time, because she had orders for them. So she worked by herself. We helped her, you know, my sister and I, even though I was 5, you know, we would set the patterns a certain way. We would mark it the way mom would teach us, and just helped her to, you know, put everything on the mannequins, which were creepy as hell. But we would do that. We would help her. And so with what she was making and with what my father was making, they were really, really trying to hurry up and save up as much money so they can get out. And so that's what they were doing. And so let me explain to you about how we don't go to the bathroom by ourselves because of this incident that happened. So this is my next experience, and this one's another one of mine, is another personal experience. And so my mother had, you know, taken her shower, my dad showered, and my sister showered, and it was just me because, you know, tomboy, and then Stinky didn't like to take a bath when she was young. And so my mom was like, hey, you need to, you know, I prepared a bath. You need to go in there. You need to, you know, wash up and everything. And so we can go to bed. So my mom and my dad were setting up the living room. And again, you know, I'm down the hall. And so they, you know, were in there. They were talking, and my sister was helping bring, you know, blankets and stuff. And so there's a lot of traffic through the hallway. The door's wide open. I'm taking my bath. And all of a sudden, as I'm playing in the bath, I remember getting that sinking feeling that I would get whenever that thing was around. And I don't see it. I look up, but I know it's there. Like I feel that feeling. And I know that it's there, but I don't see it. And so I want to say self-preservation at this point, I undid the little chain to the bathtub. There was a little white top that just held the water, and you pull the chain. So I undid the chain because I was going to get out. And so I'm still feeling, and I feel this coldness. And I get out of the tub. And as I'm getting completely out of the tub and I grab the towel, I feel a shove, like a really hard shove. And I flew and hit, like skidded, because I'm still wet, you know, with just a little bit of a portion of the towel. And I skidded and I hit the corner of the, I don't know, the vanity of where the sink is. Hit the corner on my shoulder. I didn't hit my head because I put my hand up, and I start to scream. And then when I look, because there's a little distance to it, when I look, I see it. And I'm screaming, and I'm, you know, trying to get up. And when you're a kid, I'm like scrambling on all fours, butt up in the air, butt ass naked. And I start to scream, and my mom and my dad hear me, and they start running towards me. Well, as I'm skidding, like trying to get up to go towards the door, it closed the freaking door. It closed the door. And my parents are trying to get in, and they can't. And I start to scream and cry, and I see it, and I froze at one point, like in mid-cry. And I remember saying, Mom, help me. And they're like, my dad is literally, he is like hitting the door. He's kicking the door. He's slamming against it. And so my mom's like, you leave my daughter alone. And she starts to pray, which got me to pray. And so I start, Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. And I could not remember the prayer. I could not remember the Our Father, which I already knew. I knew that, the Hail Mary, the Glory Be, all of that. And I would get as far as, Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. And then forget, and would start over and over and over. And my mother is forgetting as well. And then my father starts praying as he's still trying to break down the door. And my sister's praying, and we all start to pray. And then finally, I looked at it, and I remember getting really angry. Like a calmness came over me, and I got angry, and I said, you have no power over me. Open that door. And when I said that, the door opened. My dad flew through because he was in the way of trying to break it down. He flew through, and that was it. And where those words came from, how they came from, I don't know, but something told me to say that. And to this day, it freaks me out. But to this day, I remember the look on my dad's face when he walked in and saw the 3 scratches that I had on my back. Because remember, I explained that it pushed me. It pushed me, and I had 3 long scratches down my back. So that was my next experience.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable, but is entirely true.
Okay, so, this is my pretty terrifying experience that I went through. I was probably like early teens, and it was around the time that I got diagnosed with epilepsy. But I'd never, and still to this day, have never experienced anything like this before. Like this, that was the first and last time. So I'm living at my house in North Carolina. Lived there for about 12, 13 years. Never had anything weird go on. Like, you know, and I'm a believer in this kind of stuff. So, but like, personally, it was never a thing. Like, but so I'm home alone. I'm like 13, 14 years old. And my parents are out with friends. And I'm a teenager. It was not unusual for me to be home by myself, you know, like, and we lived in a very very secluded, just nice, quiet area. So I was home alone. I'm watching that 70s show, and I'm wide awake. You know, I have my lights on, and I'm just chilling, watching TV. And all of a sudden, I hear the front door open, and it's like, it's like 2 rooms over, like, like there's my bedroom, there's my sister's bedroom, and then there's the front door. We lived in it was originally a duplex, but they made it into just one large house. So anyway, I hear the front door open, and I'm like, oh, that's kind of weird, but whatever. I hear it open, and I hear, because I immediately hear like my sister and like a friend of hers. She's 4 years older than me, so like she and her friend were probably just out, whatever, and they were coming back to the house, and I heard giggling, like them carrying on or whatever, and and like obviously walking into like a dark area. I didn't have a bunch of lights on in the house, but they were walking into my sister's bedroom, and I hear them giggling a little bit more, and then that and then I hear one of them say, "Hold me, I'm scared," just being funny. I don't know. And then I sat up, and I was trying to about to say I was just like, hey, hey, what's up, guys? How you doing? Have a good night, blah blah blah. And once I sat up to speak to them, and say hi, it was silent. I am talking dead silence, nothing, no noise, nothing. And I'm like, hello? The white girl I am. Gotta investigate. So I'm like, hello? And I don't get a response. It's silent. And I start freaking the fuck out. I was in hysterics, calling my mom, telling her that she needs to come home now. I'm like, I heard somebody in the house. I thought it was Cassidy and one of her friends. I swear to God, Mom, I'm not making this up. My dad went 80 all the way home. My mom was on the phone with the cops. Cops show up. They search the house. They search around the house. They search everywhere, and there's no one there. But Mom was like, oh, God, I mean, maybe you just dozed off and you dreamt it, or I'm like, Mom, no. I don't think you understand. This was real. This actually happened. And to be honest, I had a best friend 2 doors down from me, since 3rd grade. And, we took the same bus together. And then she ended up telling me, years later, when we were a little older, that our land was originally an Indian burial ground. So that freaked me out. But we didn't have any experiences like that. We didn't have paranormal or supernatural, weird, strange, unusual experiences at the house. At least I hadn't, and as far as I know, my family never did either. So this was one thing that will be forever etched in my mind. It absolutely terrified me, and it makes me shake to this day. Sorry about the camera being shaky, but I get really spooked out, or wigged out and spooked over that still. Yeah, that's my scary story.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true. I'll go first.
Right, so I actually grew up in a haunted house. This story that I'm about to tell you is something out The Conjuring or Insidious. And it's pretty messed up, but it's my life and it's what I experienced, so I thought I'd share it. With you. So yeah, this is a bit of a long one, but it's worth the wait, so yeah, just stick around till the end and you'll find out why it was so scary. So, I lived with my mum growing up. It was just me and my mum. We moved into this house when I was 4 years old, and literally 2 weeks of being in this house,
spooky stuff started happening, and it was weird and wild. We actually lived in a house that was right next to a cemetery. I don't know if that had anything to do with it being haunted, but it was definitely something else too. But you'll find that out soon. But yeah, so moved in. Within 2 weeks, there was things go missing. Fire alarms would go off at 3 o'clock in the morning. There'd be bangs, things falling off the shelves. It'd sound like people running up and down the stairs. Just loads of really weird, bizarre things. And then also at 4 years old, I woke my mum up. Like she told me that I woke her up at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I was like, Mum, there's a demon there, and there. And my mum was like, oh hell no, and she grabbed me and took me to my auntie's, because no 4-year-old child knows what the word demon is. Like I don't know where I would have got that from. Like there's no, she wouldn't let me watch TV or anything at like 4. I would like, this was back a while ago, do you know what I mean? Anyway, I used to have night terrors too, so like she'd literally find me at like 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, just downstairs or on the landing, and I used to shout, and I'd just be shouting. Yeah, I don't have night terrors anymore, luckily, but yeah, that was an experience. But yeah, so there was just a lot that would happen. And anyway, after being there for a while, my mum was like, do you know what, like, we need a psychic in or something, because we were going between my mum's house to my auntie's house constantly, because we were always scared because of stuff that had happened. Like I used to see shadow figures. I also would see a man that would stand at the end of my bed, and he had long black hair, long black beard. He was about 6 foot odd tall, stocky, wearing like raggy clothes, boots, like heavyweight boots, and that's what we'd actually hear going up the stairs. And he had black eyes, like dark eyes, like he looked evil, like he was so scary. And I used to hear him shouting from the corners of the bedroom, like, I'm gonna kill your family, I'm gonna kill you, like loads of proper awful things. So yeah, after all of that, my mum was like, right, we need to get psychics in, because this house is weird, there's something going on. We need psychics out to come and help us, because we can't live here, like, with this happening. My mum literally rang the council, because she was like, what the hell? But yeah, so anyway, my mum ended up getting the psychics to come in. Psychics come in, do what they have to do, and then they go to my old bedroom, and that's when they're like, there's a ghost portal in this cupboard. There's a ghost portal in this cupboard, and that's why things are being able to come through and back out. Like, and there's so many different like things going on and activity. Also, they went into the kitchen and they started going, I'm getting a stabbing energy in here. There's something bad that's happened in here. And Mum was like, oh, great, good to know. So yeah, the psychics came, did what they did, then they left. And everything was okay for a bit, but things still needed, like, my mum was then talking about getting a priest in and everything. Anyway, my mum ended up going to our next door neighbour, because our next door neighbour had actually lived there, like, her whole life, like, since well before we lived there. So she actually knew the old neighbours who lived there. So my mum asked her about them and, like, was like, do you know anything about who used to live here? And she proceeds to tell my mum that there used to be a son and a mum who used to live there, and the son had mental health problems, which was kind of similar to me and my mum too. Like, I have mental health problems. I'm diagnosed now with autism and ADHD, so, like, and my mum was on her own too. But yeah, similar to us, she was a single mother, but she actually used to blame her son for the dad leaving, and she used to abuse him in the house. Obviously, back in those days, people used to abuse, like, the kids and stuff. but she used to go like way further. Like she'd lock him in the cupboard and beat him and things like that, and that's why the portal was actually in the cupboard, because that's where he used to hide and that's where she'd lock him in. But yeah, pretty much he used to like run around the streets naked and things like that. And one day when he was fully grown and he was an adult, he ended up snapping and he slit his mum's throat in the house downstairs. So that's actually why the psychics picked up on that. But she didn't die, she actually survived. And then he still lived with her and he ended up dying from a heart attack in the house. And that's actually how he died. So he actually did die in the house, so it makes sense why he was haunted it. But yeah, that's what our next door neighbour told us, which made sense. But yeah, anyway, then my mum ended up getting a priest in. He blessed the house, and then when he left, he was supposed to come back again to bless it a second time. He didn't, because he had a heart attack. He had a heart attack when he left the house, which is just off it. Like, that is actually insane. Like another part that reminds me of The Conjuring too is one time me and my friend were downstairs. It was 3 o'clock in the morning again. This was through lockdown. We were sat there, literally behind my friend, in the darkness of the landing. It was fucking horrible. It was absolutely awful. And we shit ourselves and ran. But yeah, so that is like pretty much why my house was haunted. And a side story, so actually years later, like after all of this, well, my mum did get another priest in to bless it again and all, so activity did calm down after that, but yeah. But continuing, years later, my mum ended up actually talking to this man on Facebook, and she was like, you know, they were talking, you know, my mum's, you know, getting to know him, and then he says, like, he's like, oh, whereabouts do you live? And she was like, oh, I live, like, our road. And he was like, huh, oh, you don't live at... And then said our house number to her. And she was like, how do you know where we live? Like, how do you know where I live? Like, how do you know what number I live on that road? And he ends up saying, oh, well, actually, my father used to live there. His father, right? And he proceeds to send a picture to my mum of him and his dad when he was a little kid. The photo is in black and white. It's the most horrifying thing I've ever seen, by the way. The photo, when my mum showed me this photo, I felt sick to my stomach, because in the photo, his dad was the man who used to stand at the end of my bed. It was the exact same man in that photo, and that photo was horrifying, because even in the photo and all, there was loads of weird faces in the background, like demonic looking faces. Like, I don't know where they were, but there was loads of like statues and weird. It was really creepy. But yeah, so my mum blocked him, because also what the psychics had told us too was, don't let history repeat itself. Because the psychics literally said that they were worried because of the similarities between me and my mum and him and his mum. So yeah, that's my story. And it was, yeah, I wish I still had the photo, because then I would post it, because honestly this photo is terrifying, but it is some man and his dad, so I can't really do that. But yeah, he was scary. But yeah, that's my ghost story. Thank you.
A ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
Okay, so I understand that I'm super late to the stitch, but I wanted to share this. And before I shared this, I wanted to call my sister and my mom and just make sure that I wasn't losing my mind, because we never have talked about this since I've been an adult. But sure enough, they all said, yep, that's exactly what happened. You're not crazy. That house was haunted. So here's the story. So this took place in Bristol, Wisconsin. I was in 4th grade, and we moved around a lot. So we rented a lot of different houses. My mom was a single mom. It was kind of just wherever we could end up. Well, this was a really nice house, and it was on a little dead-end street, and we loved it there for about a week. And then all of a sudden, weird things started happening. Lights were turning on and off, TVs turning on and off, you know, the typical stuff. But then it got really scary. So after that first week, I started sleeping in my mom's room instead of my sister because we didn't want to sleep by ourselves. Because I was waking up between 3 and 3:30 every single morning, freaked out. Like something was this close to my face and breathing in my face. I was so scared. I'd wake up crying and just terrified, like I wasn't alone, like something was watching me in my room. Well, one night we were sleeping in my mom's room and it was 3:17 in the morning, and I only remember that because the clock was right next to me. I was facing the wall. There was colored blocks on the wall like my mom had painted in these. It doesn't matter, but I just remember this so vividly. And my little sister sat up in the bed and started speaking fluently in some language that we did not know. So I sit up, I turn on the light, I freak out and sit in the corner, and my mom is shaking her. Brittany, wake up. What's going on, Brittany? And she is just staring straight ahead, speaking in this language, which my mom found out was Latin. 3 to 5 minutes, she stops and comes to and starts crying. And my mom's like, what happened? And she said, it was so bright, it was so scary, there was wings in my face. And she just kept saying, there was wings in my face, there was wings in my face. So weird. I still to this day don't know what that means or what happened. I just remember being terrified and so confused as to what just happened. So a few days after that, we had just gotten home from school. My siblings and I are sitting in the living room, eating a snack, watching TV, winding down, and we hear, and we freak out because it's coming from the bathroom, and my sister and I run in there. And my mom is in the bath and pounding on the glass, and the second that we open the door, she sits up out of the water and crying and saying something was holding her under the water. Weird things would happen. Like I would hear my siblings when they weren't even there. My mom would say that she'd hear us running upstairs, like we just got home from school, saying, Mom, we're home. And she'd come upstairs, we weren't there. Just really weird stuff. It got to the point where it was so scary to live there. My mom literally just had a gut instinct, like we had to leave. So one day she literally said, pack your stuff, we're moving out tomorrow. Was so determined to move out of this place that we moved in with one of her friends until the new place that we were going to rent was ready. After we move out of this place, my mom gets a phone call from the landlord accusing my mom of blowing up the house. Quickly determined that it was nobody's doing. There was an underground gas leak and we had just gotten out in perfect timing. I wish that I could sit here and tell you that us moving made the oppression and experiences stop, but actually it came with us to the next place and got even worse, and I could tell you stories for days, like friends telling me they see demons walk in and out of my house. Follow me for more.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true. I'll go.
I might have told this on here before, but I used to work with this girl, we'll call her Carla. And Carla lived with her 7-year-old daughter in this 2-bedroom house in Vallejo, California. And she'd only been living there for about a month. And, she was really stoked when she first got the place because she got a really good deal on it. It had a bedroom, like a small second bedroom for her daughter. She was really excited. It was the first time that her daughter would have her own room. And one day, Carla comes in and she's like, I need to move. She'd only been in this house for like a month. It was really weird. And so we were like, well, what's going on, Carla? Like, what happened? Why do you want to move? I thought this was like your dream rental, you have great rent. It has 2 bedrooms, blah, blah, blah. It was in a nice part of town. And Carla says, well, I got called into my daughter's school this morning and they told me that they were concerned because my daughter had said that she was afraid of me and she didn't want to come home. And so when Carla had asked, well, what's the story? Like, why did she say that? They said that the 2 of them had been sleeping together in the bed because Carla's daughter had been refusing to sleep in her own room. And so she was sleeping in the bed with Carla. And she had woken up that night to her mother speaking English in a man's voice. Now, this is important because Carla is Mexican and only really spoke Spanish with her daughter at home. So, we were like, well, yeah, that's weird, but why do you have to move out of your house because of this? Like, that doesn't make any sense. And so Carla goes on to tell us that, all of this weird stuff has been happening and she's kind of put it off, like her daughter would refuse to sleep in the second bedroom, and that the daughter would go in there and take all of the clothes off the hangers and fling them across the room, and Carla couldn't catch her daughter doing it to punish her, and she didn't know why she was doing it. And then the daughter had been talking about like all of this weird stuff about like seeing a white man at the end of the hall. So she was like afraid to go to the bathroom by herself because she would always see this white man at the end of the hall. And I think I want to add here that I had met Carla's daughter, and she was 7 years old, and she was one of those like very quiet, introverted, serious, shy children. She wasn't the type to like make up a bunch of stories or be like attention seeking or any of that sort of thing. Carla also related a few instances of like waking up in the middle of the night to her computer monitor in her bedroom being turned on, and like it had gone, like her computer had gone to some websites that she had never visited before, and it was really weird, so she thought she had a computer virus. And the thing with her daughter being scared to just be in the house had kind of accelerated, on top of all of this. And so they had been spending a lot of nights at Carla's new boyfriend's house instead. So they weren't really spending a lot of time in this house anyway. So at some point, prior to getting called into her daughter's school, Carla had a conversation with her neighbor, who was like this old hippie woman who lived next door and had been in the house for ages. And here's the scary thing. I mean, all of this other stuff, it could be explained, right? It could be just some weird things, people's imagination. But the neighbor said, most people don't stay more than a few months in that house. And I think it's because there was a guy who used to live in the house with his boyfriend. I don't know when this happened, but there had been a guy who had lived in that house with his boyfriend, and they had done a self-unaliving kind of thing. I don't want to say the words because, the algorithm. But yeah, essentially, he had killed his boyfriend and then went into the closet, the one in the bedroom that belonged to the daughter, and from the railing. And yeah, and that really freaked Carla out. She was convinced that the house was haunted, and it's probably like one of the scariest stories I've ever heard. And Carla was absolutely serious, and being like a fairly devout Mexican woman, she didn't even want to call the priests in, none of that. She just wanted to get out of there. I mean, I've had a few like potentially paranormal experiences myself, but nothing that wild. I don't know, maybe I should share those at some point.
I couldn't stitch the ghost story, so I'm going to tell you guys some crazy African witchcraft story. So I'm Congolese, right? And my mother's sisters most of them are married to military men. And just like the US, if you're married to a guy in the military, there's a chance that you're going to get deployed. So a couple of years ago, one of my mother's two of my mother's sisters were deployed to, the first one was deployed. Her family was deployed to Beni. If you guys don't know what Beni is the place that had the crazy massacre happen there a couple of years ago. Like, it was insane. My aunt's husband was deployed in that area because there was talks that there was danger in that area. So since they were military, they moved her and the whole family to that Beni area. When she arrived in Beni, she was pregnant. The locals told her, like, hey, the military women that came there before her, they're like, hey, Beni is so, like, it's a lot of people here have witchcraft. And if you're pregnant, you're supposed to cover your belly, because if somebody notices that you're pregnant, something might happen to you. But she's like, child, what kind of barbaric practices do you guys have in this area? I'm pregnant. Like, I'm not hiding that shit. I mean, it's not like she was showing her belly, but she was just like, how am I going to hide a pregnancy? She's skinny already. Like, it's not happening. So one day she was in the market. A market is like, you know how you guys have a farmer's market? In Africa, they have a market set up every single day. It's like yeah. So she was headed to the market or at the market, something like that. A woman looked at her and was like, oh, you're pregnant. And she was like, yeah, I'm pregnant. And the lady was like, okay. She didn't think much of it. One day she woke up and there was no baby in her belly. There was no baby in her belly. The baby disappeared. The baby disappeared in her belly. There was no baby in her belly. She was like, I know I was pregnant. Like, it was obvious that she was pregnant. And there was no baby in her belly. So she told her husband, I can't, we gotta move. I can't do this. This is too much for me. So they moved to a different area, but not too far because they are in the military. So they just moved to like a different town or whatever. But she was still in Benny. And then my other aunt's husband was also deployed to Benny because Benny was starting to become a little dangerous and they needed more military help. So this is where my aunt got into a fight with one of the local ladies. And the lady was like, yeah, I'm going to show you who I am, yada, yada. She was like, bitch, I don't care. I'll do the same thing. You know, they got into it. Those aren't the words that she used, but like they got into it. Fast forwarded, my aunt gets sick. My aunt, the same aunt that lost the baby in Benny, she gets sick. This was like a week or two after arguing with this lady. Within like 3 weeks, my aunt passed away. So when she passed away, there was like, she had about 7 kids at that time. And I think a 10-month, not a 10-month, a baby that's like about a year old, a year and a half, something like that. But the baby was already walking. So she had passed away and one of my aunts had to take over the 7 kids. When the locals heard that she passed away, everybody remembered the fight that she had with the lady. So they were like, oh my God, we know who killed her. We know who killed her. Somebody did some root work on her. We just say poison. So somebody poisoned her. By the time they tried to look for that lady had fled the town. And she went to a whole different province, like a whole different state. So they couldn't find her anymore. But word around the street was like, oh, so-and-so killed her. And I guess later on she boosted like, yeah, y'all better not try me. She came back to the area when my aunt and them left. And she was like, yeah, y'all better not try me. Because, you know, what. Cool. So after like 3 to 6 months, you know, after she got buried and everything, there was war in Benny. Like really, that's when the bloodshed. If y'all remember the story about the Congo War, there was a crazy war in Benny. I can talk about that later. But they had to move to like a different place because military families are moved around. You know, once y'all find each other after the war, they move y'all to a different area. But they had to remain in a different, it wasn't a safe town, like in a little area base for all the military people before they get moved out. So my aunt had all 7 kids. So in total, she had 15 kids in her household. One early morning, if you've been to Africa, you know that people are outside, you know, sitting outside the house or whatever. She hears a knock at her door. So she basically, you know, opens the door and they greet her. And in Africa, you don't let people stand outside. You let people come into the house. So she let her come into the house. And she said that as soon as this lady walked into the house, she felt like they were in a bubble. It was like something they felt like it was a bubble. Everything around them had stopped, time had stopped. Everything had stopped. It was just them and this lady. She felt that, but she was just like, maybe it's in her head. But this lady sits down and she was like, hi, how are you? The lady's like, I'm good. How are you? And she's like, I'm great. And she's like, do you want some water? The lady's like, sure. They brought her water. Because in Africa, they always got to offer you something to drink or eat before y'all start a conversation. So she's like, how can I help you? And the lady is like, no, nothing. I just came to check up on y'all. And my aunt is like, oh. And she was like, oh, maybe she came to check up on us because of the funeral she had. And she was like, yeah, no, we've been doing good. The kids, you know, my sister's kids, they're all with me. She was like, yeah, everybody looks really good. And my aunt is like, yeah. And she was just like, oh, my aunt's like, you look kind of like I know you or something. She was like, yeah, I was just, yeah. And she's like, her answers were just like, yeah. And she was like, well, I have to take my leave now. After like 15 minutes of them, just asking about the kids and about people, just like asking specifics about kids and just like her, stuff like that. It was weird. So then she tells my aunt, she's like, okay, well, I have to take my leave now. And my aunt was like, oh, okay. Can I walk you out? She was like, no, it's okay. So my aunt, I think, walked her to the door. And she walks out the door. And as soon as she walked out the door, my aunt says she felt like this. She felt like that's how they felt, like that's how, I don't know how to, have you watched a movie when somebody runs into like a time machine and they gets like somebody spit you out? So she felt like they were like the bubble popped or there was something just weird happened in that moment. So as soon as the lady walks out the door, all the kids look at my aunt and like, Ma, what just happened? So she's looking at them like, do you guys see what just happened? So now everybody's freaked out like this didn't just happen. And she's like, hold up. Did y'all see what I saw? And they were like, Ma, that's her. Her little child, who was like 1.5 years old, was like, Mommy, that lady was telling my aunt, it's like, Mommy, that lady looks like my mama. Her name is this and that. That's my mama. And my aunt is like, this can't be. The kids are like, Ma, it is her. We know it's her. So they ran out the door because they ran out the door. So she asked her neighbors like, yo, did you guys see the lady that just walked out of here? The neighbor's like, what lady? She's like, the lady that just walked out of here. Did you guys see her? And they were like, nobody walked out of your house, ma'am. And she was like, come on, you guys have been sitting, she's telling people like, I know y'all were here when everybody was like, we've been here all morning. Nobody has walked out of your house. Nobody walked in. Nobody walked out. And they continue doing what they're doing. So she immediately calls all her sisters and she's like, yo, I just seen her. Like my sister, like her, my aunt came back to visit them. She was like, yo, I just seen her. They were like, see who? They were like, she's like, I seen my daughter. I've seen her. She is here. And she explained the whole story to everybody. Everybody was like, what do you mean? It's like, ask the kids. And the kids were like, we witnessed it. She was here. She came to visit. She sat down. We looked at her. One of the kids even sat next to her. They felt her. She was real. Everything was real. But nobody outside saw her. Until this day, that is one of the most creepiest thing ever. And then the other creepy thing was, one of my aunts yelled at her daughter or like, I don't know, something happened. So the next day she saw her, like my aunt at the window, and my aunt's telling her like, yo, don't you ever, and I mean ever, lay your hands on my daughter again. Because if you try it, I will beat the shit out of you. And she told that to like her younger sister. So that was creepy as shit. But ever since then, she only appeared one other time because somebody yelled at her kid. And she told that person like, y'all know I don't play about my kids. Stop it. And that was the last time anybody's ever seen her again.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true. I'll go.
So I have a couple of stories. After this one, you can let me know if you want to know more. But this is the big one. The big guy. In college, I was haunted for no particular reason. I don't mess with Ouija boards. I had never gone to a medium. I had never gotten my tarot cards read even. I love paranormal and supernatural things. Like I watch scary movies like it's my job, but I don't mess with it. So this is my freshman year of college. I'm in a dorm. I'm in one of the newer dorms. Like it's very new, very nice. And weird shit would happen. And it would happen to me. I had a roommate. She didn't experience these things. If she wants to pipe in case I'm wrong about that, go right on ahead. But not that I'm aware of. First, it was just little things like right above my head in my bed, I guess. I was on the top floor, right next to the laundry room. And in the top corner of my room, I would hear just tapping and irregular tapping like that. And honestly, if somebody was even on the other side of that wall, which there wasn't, it was the laundry room, I don't think I would have been able to hear them tapping it like that because we had really thick walls. I would also hear, it almost felt like somebody was whispering in my ear, and then when I would turn to like, because instinctively you just turn to a voice like that, it would stop and there was nothing there. I could never make out words. It was always just like somebody had started whispering or something. I experienced sleep paralysis in this room one time. I have never experienced it since, and never before. I had really vivid nightmares in this room, where I saw figures who were really trying to cause harm, as in like killing people in my dorm and trying really hard to get after my roommate. But after first semester, my roommate moved out. She transferred colleges and I never got another roommate. So I lived alone. And just for like some context, we lived in suite style dorm rooms. So like, if you don't know, a suite style is where it's 2 dorm rooms with 2 people in each room connected by a shared bathroom. And so we had a bathroom, but we did not connect to another room because right next door was our laundry room. So I was practically like in a mini apartment all by myself, which was really nice. Around Valentine's Day, I was talking to a guy and he had gotten me a bouquet of flowers. Me being a broke college student, I didn't have a vase. I didn't have a vase to put these flowers in. So I put it in a Fuzzy's taco cup, which was like this big, probably like 10 inches tall. Honestly, perfect for flowers. I put it on my windowsill, which, another little layout for you. It goes my bed, my old roommate's bed that I still had in my room, a window in the middle. Underneath that is a little purple suede chair that I had. On the opposite side of the room, like towards the entrance of the room, we had the bathroom and the AC unit was above that, and then the front door was kind of like over here. So I put those flowers on that windowsill. It was February, Valentine's Day. The window was not open. It was cold as hell. I also didn't have the AC going. I had the heat on. Valentine's Day that year was a Thursday, and on Saturday night, I checked the flowers, made sure they still had water. Everything was hunky-dory. I wake up Sunday morning, and the flowers are all over my room. I am not kidding. All over my room. So you know the aisle that I was talking about between the 2 beds. So 2 beds, window, this is kind of like a walkway. They were all down that walkway. And you know when you have something in a cup and you dump it like this, obviously it all goes straight down, you know? But when you have something in a cup and you empty it and you kind of like shake it out like this, and it is layered in that way, and everything's kind of pointing, like the head of the thing is pointing that way. That was what these flowers were doing. They were layered on top of each other as though somebody had dumped them out like this. The cup, oh, and they were all over my floor, cascading down the chair that was in front of the window. So like, here's the chair, here's the aisle, I guess. They were like, it was like a waterfall, like going like that. But they were layered as though somebody had started on this side of the room and emptied them going this way. The cup was on the chair, upside down, empty. The flowers were dead. They looked like they had been dead for days. Days, like dried out, dead. I'm like getting flustered just thinking about it. There was no water. Like I said, that chair was purple suede. Suede. You have water in the same room as suede and it stains. Nope. It wasn't wet. I had carpeted floors and under that is tile. So if you got those floors wet, you were screwed for like a full day. There was no dampness, no water, no puddle, no stain, nothing. There was no water to be found anywhere. To this day, I don't know why I didn't take a picture. I think I was just like so in shock that I didn't. I just picked it up. But that was something that shook me to my core. From then on, other things would happen to me. I have other stories from other years in college, but that takes the cake. That was the scariest thing that's ever happened to me, and to this day, I do not know why. It seems like it attached itself to me for the next couple of years, but literally since I have graduated college and moved back to the state that I'm from, nothing, knock on wood, nothing has happened. So if any of you guys have theories, I'd be very open to hearing them. But yeah, that's my story.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
Y'all, I swear it must not be meant for me to tell this story. I have recorded this shit like 5 times and it keeps deleting. Like, I'll press the check mark after I finish recording and then I move to the next part and my whole fucking video is gone. What the fuck? Anyways, when I was 14, graduated middle school, fucking 10 times the charm. I hope I don't have to tell this shit again. When I was 14, I was just graduating middle school and we moved into a new house, and the previous occupant, owner, whatever, had just recently passed away. She didn't pass away in the house, but she did just recently pass away. So I'm not sure if this was her or what. We don't know whose spirit it was. We never confirmed. But a couple months into us living in the house, my mom, my grandmother, and my stepdad were all going to the store. And they asked me if I wanted to come, but I told them no, like I would, chill at home. And I was in my room on my phone, and my mom's bedroom is upstairs. Mine and the rest of the rooms in the house is downstairs. So I was in my room and I heard my mom's bedroom door slam like hard as hell. So I didn't even go check. I just immediately barricaded myself in my room and I called my mom and my grandmother like, oh, like, baby, y'all gotta come back home because something is in this house. So something or somebody is in this house. So they immediately came back home because the store they were at wasn't that far, and they checked the whole house. Nothing was there. So my mom was like, oh, you sure it wasn't the air? Like, it might have created a draft. And I'm like, no, like so because the house is older, they have a AC unit upstairs and downstairs. So both AC units were off. So it wasn't that, like, something slammed that damn door. And so my grandma was like, we just gonna pray. So fast forward a couple months. I want to say this is 2015. I was going on 15. I was still 14, but I was going on 15. And I was just laying down one morning. Like, I had just woke up and the sun was already up. And I heard somebody calling my name. It sounded like my mom. So she called my name like twice. So I'm like, huh? Like, what you want? So I go upstairs. Homegirl sleep. Like, sleep. I go in her room. Her and my stepdad, they both sleeping. So I immediately, like, ran back downstairs, went in my room, forced myself to go back to sleep because I'm like, oh, hell no. Like, what the fuck was calling my name? Because it wasn't her. So I think maybe, like, that next day or a couple days later, I told my grandma what had happened. She was like, when you hear stuff like that, don't respond because that's like a bad spirit trying to get your attention. And now that I'm older, I know that it's referred to as a mimic spirit. And mimic spirits take on the voice of people you know to get your attention. So that happened. Fast forward to 2017, my mom is pregnant with my little sister, and I have my dog. I got my dog Bella in February of 2017. This happened like in the summertime, maybe like July. So Bella was what? She was born in December. So January, February, March, April, May, June, July. So she was like 7 months. And dogs are sensitive to like paranormal and stuff like that. So my mom and my stepdad were going on vacation for, I guess, to celebrate their anniversary. And literally every night that they were gone, Bella would wake me up at like 3, 4 in the morning, barking loud as hell. And I never had the courage to go see what it was because I'm like, bro, I'm home by myself. Like, what the fuck are you barking at?
And I kind of knew it was something on the other side because it was the witching hour. Like, what else would she be barking at this time of the morning? And so, that would happen. And when my mom and her husband returned, she continued. And because they were there, I kind of like built the courage to go see what it was. And I would open my bedroom door and she would be in the hallway and nothing would be there, like nothing. So fast forward a couple months, this is the week of my mom's baby shower. And it's like the end of the year. And my god sister / aunt came to visit. And she's like the same age as my mom. So her mom christened me, but her mom was older. So I called her my aunt because she was like the same age as my mom. So she came to visit, and I guess my mom was like talking to her in the guest room, and we were all getting ready for bed. So I think I was already in my room at this point. And so I guess my mom left out of the room to go back upstairs, and I guess she came out of the room shortly after my mom to like maybe use the bathroom or something, and she saw like a black tall figure, looked like an old man in the corner of like the den. And my mom was already like heading upstairs, so it wasn't my mom. But the next day she told my mom what she saw, and my mom was like, oh girl, that probably was me. Like, you know, I be coming downstairs in the middle of the night sometimes. And my mom, she was like, no, you were all like, this was like right after we finished talking, like you was by the steps. And she was like, it was just staring at her. And she was like, it didn't do her nothing. It just was staring. So, but yeah, my mom doesn't believe in stuff like that. So, you know, one thing about her, she gonna always find some type of reason as to what it could have been other than it being a damn spirit or something. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, I feel like the stuff is definitely scary because I had never experienced nothing before we moved into that house. But after 2017, it stopped. And my sister was born in January of 2018. So maybe that's why, I don't know. But yeah, whatever it was, I guess it crossed over. I never experienced nothing. Nobody else ever experienced nothing to my knowledge. But yeah, that's my story. And hopefully y'all can hear it this time because I recorded this shit 1,000 times and it keeps getting deleted.